Where's she at now?
Yeah.
Nice and cool there.
Yeah, I bet it's nice and cool.
Mayor and the city manager, where all the conversations.
Ready?
You should be good. Then I'll just have to join to be able to share your presentation.
Well, welcome everybody out for the Roy City Council work session agenda. Today's date is June 13th. The time is now 3:01 p.m. Want to recognize and welcome that we have Councilmember Saxton, Councilmember Scadden, Councilmember Sophie Fall, she's coming in on Zoom, Councilmember Jackson, and Councilmember Joe Paul. The presentation and the discussion is going to focus specifically on the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget. And so if you can, make sure all the conversation deals with the budget, although there may be other things that's taking place, we need to focus the conversation. So with that, we'd like, if you can pull up the charts, I'd like to kind of begin. As Brittany's bringing up the charts, let me just make sure you kind of understand how we got here. Matt and I talked. Matt fulfilled his, for better word, obligation when on the 7th of May, I think it was, he presented the formal proposed budget to the city council. At that very moment, it's now the city council's responsibility to do whatever you want to do with that. Meaning is that ultimately we need to approve that, but you have now an opportunity to look at it and make some decisions how we want to go forward. We had one work session, and now we're involved in the second work session with the plan to have a vote from you one way or the other next Tuesday in our formal city council meeting. Okay, so we'll walk through that process. So with that, if you don't mind, let's begin and just, I should ask Sophie, can you see those charts?
Yes, I can. What's presented on your screen, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, so let's walk through the charts and then I just want to give you a little, well, let's walk through it and I'll show you. Then I got a point in this presentation where I want to make sure that we now stop, reassess what we want to do next in terms of that portion of the budget and then move forward. Okay. Council, you have seen this. This is directly out of the proposed budget that you have. And basically it's identifying fundamentally the revenues that's going into the general fund. I chose not to put the enterprise fund issues into this. I want to focus the attention on this particular one. Okay. Next chart. In this one, we just simply took the general fund expenditures. So you get a pretty good idea in terms of how the money is projected to be spent under this budget. Next chart. I wanted to make sure you've seen what's in the budget in terms of how we're going to take care of our employees. The proposal then would be 3% COLA for all employees. General employees step system will include a 2 to 2.5% merit. The public safety employees step system includes a 3 to 3.75 merit. There's also a 4% increase in health insurance premiums. Okay, and the explanation about that. Okay, next chart. The city manager asked every department if they would go ahead as part of submitting their budget and make cuts up to 7.5% cut in the budget. That equated to a total, Amber, Matt, I think this is the number we were working through. It adds up $621,257 in cuts before you've seen the budget. Okay. Chart. It was clear in the package in terms of a couple of important things. Brandon, I appreciate this. I don't know if anybody ever realized there's 157 miles, okay, of water and sewer lines in Roy City. But certainly that's an issue. That's something you have to stay focused on. But this particular budget says there's a 1.6 mile replacement of water line and sewer line that's going to be involved when UDOT cracks open 3500 and we have to go in there and replace while that's cracked open. That's going to estimated cost around $5 million. That's also in the budget. Next chart. So with everything that's in the budget as proposed and as written, there's a proposed tax increase of $500,000. Amber was able to get information back from the county that indicate the average home value is $425,000 in Roy City. Therefore, the impact as written is that there's an anticipation of $3.23 per month per household, or an average of $38.80 per year. For the businesses, and Amber, let me tell you, I appreciate that because that was one component we didn't know for sure. The impact in terms of the proposed tax increase will be $5.88 a month or $70.55 per year. This equates to a total estimated 12% property tax increase in the budget as written. Okay. Now, included in the budget was also the proposed Water Basin Water Conservative District rate increase. And I think the way the budget reads out, you can pretty well get an idea of what this is going to be. But the important part I want to have you carry away from this portion of that, there is for a typical family of four using 9,000 gallons of water per month, there will be an increase in the fees for water going into this next budget of $1.18 per month or $14.16 per year. Okay, chart. In the budget, there's also a requirement for that 1.6 mile replacement of a line. To do that, we got to spend the next 3 years collecting enough money to pay for that. So in this budget is a requirement, and the impact to the residents is a capital improvement fee increase of $10 per month or $120 per year for the next 3 years. Now, intuitively, Matt, I know what that says, but anybody who's a water user gets that bill. Business, anybody. Just want to make sure.
Roy Water, yes.
See, they're hooked up to Roy Water. That's the bill there. We had $120 a year increase for the next 3 years. In this case, Central Weber Sewer Improvement District is also wanting to raise the rates. And that fee increase will be $2.56 a month or $30.72 per year increase. But this one basically only involves those residents, about 973, I think is what you estimated, who live on the east side of 1900. Now, at this moment, there is a plan to correct that because Roy City is anticipating putting a lift station, which will take our residents out of the Central Weber Sewer District and move them into the North Davis Sewer District, but that's not in place yet. And until that's in place, the residents on that side of 1900 are expected to take that increase. Okay, next chart. Therefore, the proposed tax increase then would be, we need $500,000. At that particular average value, it's estimated that the impact will be $38 per year and a business is $70.55 a year. When you look at the total of all of that, to include the 12% property tax increase, also the infrastructure enterprise fees, you see what the total cost will be, estimated total cost will be per resident under the budget that's written. So for most residents in Roy, it'll be $172.92 a year. Businesses are expected to come up with $204 per year increase. Residents living on the east side, Randy, this is your neighborhood area, okay? They'll be up to $203. And those businesses on the east side, and we do have a number of them over there that's tied to it, their rate would go up to $235, okay, per year increase. That's kind of a summation of what we got in front of us, hitting the highlights, okay? Next chart. Now, here's the question, council. Any discussions, any questions that staff can answer as it relates to the proposed budget as written? Any issues with this? Any comments on this?
Well, so you said $10 per month for the water, $14.16 if we did 12% increase, and then $10 for capital improvements. That's $34.16 a month, but
The 14 includes the 10.
that, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to pay that much. Okay, so,
So the $500,000 we're short is just under 12% property tax increase at our current rate right now. Which the issue with not doing that is a year after year after year. And so even a one-time sell of an asset to fund that this year kicks the can and puts us even farther down the road next year.
Next year.
So if you don't raise taxes, there is no way to recover from this mathematically.
right,
That's how I interpret it, Joe. And to be honest with you, Matt and I've talked about this. I don't know if you listened to the feds, but the feds basically, we're anticipating 3 or 4, what they thought were going to be interest rate reductions this year. They're even pondering whether we be 1. We could very well see, because as I see it, as I watch that, and some who are a little closer to the mathematics of this, they may argue that simply says, we just put 270,000 more people to work. What the high interest rate should have done, it should have slowed the economy down and literally put people unemployed. But with 270 people got employed in the nation, 270,000, it's not doing what it was designed to do, which means it's not slowing it down. And I think we're at record points now where people are spending on their credit cards and other things at a record high. So we got a really interesting dynamic occurring. If the feds don't reduce the rate, or if they increase it, bottom line would be, in my opinion, what you see now is what you're going to see again next year.
right. I think that that's pretty much what we're gonna have to do every year, to just keep up with inflation, to keep
Yep.
all of our employees to go to other cities.
Well, if you raise the rates this year to cover the cost of living, that rate will come back next year to cover the cost of living for next year.
Right.
Right.
But if you make any other changes, you've got to figure out how you're going to fund that perpetually.
And that's a good point, because I think Matt will tell you, and I don't want to speak for you, Matt. Out of the revenue stream they already had, they had enough money to pay for merit. But they needed $500,000 more to pay for COLA. So if that is the case, now remember, the cost of life is going up. If our revenue stream, sales tax, franchise tax, okay, property tax, does not increase, okay, to proportionally match those increases, then you have really no choice. And the choice would be is to say, you don't give a COLA this year, and you don't give merit and COLA next year. I mean,
And you don't have employees.
Right, you run the risk. of-
City council can only dig so many ditches.
Yeah, you.
So
Arrest so many people, put out so many fires.
you start to see the issue. And so the bottom line would be is, with everything basically flatlining, is creating a real challenge for Matt to get the revenue he needs to be able to sustain the operations. In reality, Matt will tell you, he says, my cost of doing business every year is growing, which my revenue stream coming in is not growing. And my concern right now, I'm concerned about whether or not he's even going to get an additional 500,000 next year to pay for the merit he was able to provide for this year. So these are the issues, okay? And in my opinion, probably even if you choose to consider property tax this year, you may have to face that same decision next year.
You also got to consider that property taxes, it remains the same except for new growth.
That's right.
And a lot of cities obviously are growing very fast. Troy City, not as much. For my career here, sales tax has been increasing every year after year after year, and that's how things have been funded. That's how COLAs, merits, and everything has always been funded. Sales tax has literally doubled. But this last year, we had that decrease. And when you're getting twice as much money in your sales tax as you are property tax, that means a lot. So.
So any issues, any questions, any concerns, anything you have with the budget as written?
No, the question you'd have to ask the residents, because I've got plenty of not so friendly messages, is what do you want us to cut? You basically held us hostage to fund the complex at $950,000.
Right.
And a 500, and I voted for it because it was what people wanted. But those same people don't want a property tax increase. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the niceties without paying for them.
Don't disagree.
And I'm not making that as a dig against the complex, because I did vote for it, but you can't continue to have the nice things or the nice services we have as a city and not fund them somehow. With revenue going down, costs going up.
That's the issue. That's the
Yeah,
very
because
issue.
all my
here.
family members that live in Roy, they're like, yeah, we want to have police, we want to have fire, we want to have everything we have. So how can you expect us not to have a tax increase?
Right.
Well,
So-
and point, I think, Joe, and Ann, to your point, the question is then, how much? Right.
12%.
How much are you basically going to choose to burden? Remember, what we just presented to you was not just a 1 year. There is $120, okay, requirement for 3 years. And as I mentioned to you earlier in conversations or emails, the residents don't care whether or not they're paying a property tax cost or a rate increase. They still come out of the same pocket to pay for that. And when you've got roughly $120, remember, the average resident today is going to pay $38, okay, for just the property tax. Now you put $120 on top of that, and that's 12%. Just if you look at a comparison of what the $120 to get that water pipe ready to pay for, so we can put it in there, is just like a 35 to 37% property tax increase. Comes out of the same pocket. So you add 25 or 26, okay, or 30% plus 12%, now you're sitting in the 40% range in terms of what we're proposing. And we haven't even gotten into the hard stuff we're gonna be talking about here in a minute.
Even if you bond for the water line and pay interest and all that, you're not saving that much money in the long run.
Correct. Well, on the flip side too, I think we do need to disassociate the two to go through and commingle the two is disingenuous. We need to be talking about what the effective tax rate is, because all we're doing with the utility,
It's passed through.
it's a pass through. You have to pay the piper one way or the other. And this is just financially the best way for us to go through and do that.
I don't disagree with that, but I'm saying is that, and Matt, I told you about this. The magazine says that the result of that $120 was in fact the district's cost. It was not the district cost. Brandon needs $120 from every resident to buy the pipe. That's Roy City pipe.
Right.
Now, to put that water through there, that's a different cost. But he needs $120 a year from every resident and a little bit more than that from every business. Well, excuse me, it's $120 from them as well, from every business that basically is in Roy City. So that is a Roy City cost. It's not a pass-through cost. It's a cost Roy City is.
No, you
Pass-through.
could say that's a rate increase of 15%. It's not a property. At the end of the day, it all comes out of their pocket. But I think you do have to disassociate property tax increase and rate increase. If you combine them together, they think their property taxes went up 35%.
That's
That's not
Yeah, that's the
correct.
disingenuous part. That's what I'm saying. The commingling of the two isn't something we should be doing.
They need to be presented separately, in my
Correct.
opinion.
Well.
And again,
I don't disagree with you. So when you're out there talking to your residents, okay, you make that separation. But when you talk to me and you talk to me, I'm talking to, it's coming out of the same pocket. That $200 extra is coming out of one pocket. Makes no difference whether you call it a fee of that. But to your point, I think, Randy, is there's nothing wrong with telling them the facts. Just make sure that at the end of the conversation, you says, this is what we're approving and what it's going to do to you as a resident. It says it's going to be this amount of money, fee and property tax. Make sure you make that distinction. Otherwise, trust me with this, what they're going to end up totally basically paying is going to be a little bit of, well, I'm hearing right now, we probably won't see anything from the school district. I think they're working their bond a little bit differently, but we could very well see some from the county and some other areas that are basically going to add that pile on, okay, to the resident in terms of taxes and fees. And all we have to do is say we're accountable for what Roy has control over. Everybody else's, we don't answer to them. We just answer to what we control. And the decision y'all are going to be making is going to do that. Now, please don't misunderstand. This is proposed. If 3 of you simply says, I'm not going to get that $5 million, I'll bond for it. I'll go some other way to get it. Then that $120 a year comes out of this budget. And we will have to work some other option to get Brandon the funding, so when they come knocking on his door in 3 years to put that water line in, Roy City has that. And
Well, if you
Matt-
budget, the people are still paying for it because you're gonna raise property taxes anyway out of the bond.
Good. But the impact could be a lot broader. Maybe it's a 20-year, maybe it's a 15-year. In fact, in 2027, Matt, you know better than me, we'll be pay off our bond, and we'll be ready and should be talking about reissuing that bond because we've got $100 million of infrastructure that Brandon's got to fix over the next 10, 20 years. And we're
In
gonna
the
need money to do
last,
that.
in the last work session, I talked a little bit about this. When you're doing a 20-year bond, I think it was 1,400 years to pay off or to redo all the water lines. So when you're bonding out that for 20 years, that's what happens. If you're even at the 3 years of paying for that one water line, it was staggering, right?
It
So
is. But here's the other conversation. We just give you the proposal as written. I think Matt just asked this question. You sure you want to limit that to 3 years? Now you can come back and say, well, let's reevaluate that in 3 years. And you can so state that into this document. But right now, you're gonna pass an ordinance as written that says in 3 years, that money comes out of there. Are you sure you want to do that? Because to me, the bottom line is gonna be is somebody's gotta pay this bill. And it's gotta be paid. And the question is, where's Brandon gonna come up with 80 to $100 million over the next 20 years to be able to replace all the infrastructure that's gotta be replaced?
So are you proposing, let me just step back what you're saying. Are you saying we should make the $10 increase not tied to a 3-year horizon and just say, this is it?
Right now, I do not believe our rates take in consideration infrastructure improvements. So what we charge to handle the administration, Amber, you probably know this better than anybody. We do administrative fee when we're doing with water, with sewer, we just do administrative pass-through. Is there any infrastructure coming out of that process that's paying what he needs for him to basically do all the infrastructure?
part of the base
improvements?
rate, I think we can replace almost $1 million a year.
Yeah, so there is some, but as the
Some,
years,
very
as
little.
inflation has affected it, it's become a bigger gap.
Bigger. So as written, that goes away in 3 years. Are you okay with that? And if the answer to the question is 3 of you says no, I'd like to have that reevaluated in 3 years. When that comes due, then change the language. It basically says we'll reevaluate it. Otherwise, you're gonna approve it where that thing goes away in 3 years.
So at the end of 3 years, we might figure out that we need to charge more than $10 also.
Right.
Or you might
What-
decide you don't want to charge anymore. I mean, it's your budget.
I would say reevaluate it in 3
It
years.
might have enough money in there at the end of 3 years, but
Still
so
be around.
weren't we gonna try to get money to do 3,500, all that piping, weren't we asking the legislature for money?
That's what the one is.
Right.
Yep, he needs $5 million
Correct.
to run that
Yeah.
1.6 miles.
Okay, and then the miles and miles throughout the city.
Yeah, the 150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is probably a dumb question, but so how do you know where to start in the city? Where's the oldest part or you just wait till they break and then you
Well,
start picking?
I mean, our number one objective was getting all the asbestos out of the ground. We've gotten that out, and now our next is basically, we got 4-inch line, so we're trying to address that just for fire protection. And then from there, it kind of just goes off of a yearly thing. We keep track of the water main breaks on what roads, and we tried to replace those just to.
It's like we have, the upper half is all old and then the lower half's all
Yeah,
pretty
and-
much.
yeah, and that's the bad part is the lower half's newer, but it's the acidic soils down there that
Oh, so
just
it's still-
tear everything up, so.
Mm.
To be honest with you, the upper is almost
Well,
in better
like,
shape to a certain
I
extent.
know when they replaced my water line, they're like, yeah, they put plastic in, but it was metal, been there since 1963, but. So I guess just like a fridge, they don't make them like they used to, huh?
Yeah, lots of it's in the ground though, too, as well. You're in rocky soil, dry, rocky soil up there, so.
Well, I just think in 3 years, we should just reevaluate it and then see where we're at money wise and.
One thing I wanted to point out was the utility
increase should be decided at the next meeting on Tuesdays, because we start billing in July. The property tax, you wouldn't vote on that until August, but the utility should be decided on Tuesday.
Right. Yeah, what I heard from Joe was, I heard Joe basically says, maybe we need to consider evaluating 3 years. I just heard Ann say the same thing. I'm good. Randy? Brian? It's a language change in the document that says the council reevaluates in 3 years. You okay with that?
That makes sense.
Okay, Sophie?
Yes, I agree. 3 years.
So Matt, would you consider just for the existing budget as written, would you consider just making an adjustment to just simply say, well, it'll be reevaluated, not necessarily state that it will be stopped in 3 years?
Should it be 3 years or less, or
It could be.
within 3?
When he gets to the number he
Within.
needs to basically replace that, Brandon will tell him in terms of in that pot. He might come in 2 years and simply says, hey, we don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
My biggest concern, if you listen to what Matt said, he's got $1 million or $1.2 million, okay, of money available to replace pipes. Okay? I was told by Ross, and I think Brandon repeated that, there's an $80 to $100 million bill facing Roy City. That's 100 years. The
And that's
question
water.
is,
That's
just to
not
get the
sewer.
water done.
Yeah.
How long does a typical pipe last in the ground?
Yeah, just kind of like we were talking up on this upper end, I think you can probably get 50+ years, but I think on that lower end, I mean, we're probably running up against 20 years. I mean, it just strictly depends on the type of soil. And now, I mean, we're using all plastic now instead of the ductile, which that's a problem, but lots of things we're having happen is the valves are blowing up because metal parts, and that's sick, or acid eats them.
Now, I will tell you, and I will tell you, Matt and team actually submitted for congressional funding for infrastructure. Is that a fair statement, Matt?
Correct.
You want to just mention that?
Yeah, so we did it through Representative Moore's office. And we submitted a grant basically to earmark some money for Roy City.
Okay.
And it's been moved on to the next step, which is a committee.
Okay. If that comes in, it could adjust and could address this issue if that gets approved. But yeah, I think you just need we're looking at alternate sources to find funding, but Matt got that in. Appreciate that. Now we'll wait and see if Congress basically allows that to happen and push.
When do you find out that answer?
They didn't give us a timeline on it.
This year though, before the end of the year?
That's open.
Okay. Matt got that change. Okay. So next chart. Now what we want to do is we want to talk a little about the proposed budget as written, plus the adding back in the 7.5% cuts. You each were told, or at least identified, what was actually impacted. Honestly, to be honest with you, Michelle, you probably took the biggest cut. Okay, I mean, call it numbers, call it people. The reality is that when it was all said and done, we looked at the numbers, you took a big cut on this, okay? He put that in the requirement before you ever seen the budget. He says, I wanted he said he wanted all his department heads to put a 7.5% cut in. Since the cuts involve operating expenses, personnel cuts were not involved. I did not see anything in that budget says we're removing people. This simply looked at all of the other kind of budget things associated with the work, okay? However, some of the financial cuts impacts were disproportionately between the departments. Michelle, I pointed you out because you took a heavy load on that, okay, in that cut. Had the city manager not required the cuts, the proposed property tax increase would have been $1.1 million. I think, Amber, that's the number you sent to us and not 500,000. Is that a fair statement?
The one you mentioned earlier was the 500,000.
That's the first one, but then but we're gonna show the next chart here after I get through that bottom statement, but it was a $621,000 in cuts. If had Matt not got that $621,000 in cuts, then the proposed property tax to get to what appears to be a budget, or in this case, a balanced budget, the property tax increase would have been 1.1 million. Is that a fair statement? Okay. You okay with all that, council?
Which is what, 25, 26%?
24.5.
24.49.
Given the current city state of sales tax revenue to Roy City, there is nothing to suggest a change is coming into the future. It must be assumed that the department heads may not, let me just repeat this, may not be able to generate another 7.5%, okay, cut in operational cuts in the future budgets. I read your budgets, okay? Some of you took a healthy hit. To literally cut you again, another 7.5%, I don't know how you can function. You may have a whole room full of people, but there may not be any materials or anything for them to do because we won't have the money to pay for it. Just recognize this is not talking about an issue this time, it's talking about issues coming that could very well impact it. Next chart. So I wanted to make sure you've seen what those proposed, what the cuts were before you've seen the budget. There they are. Okay? And as I mentioned to you, Michelle, you took a hefty hit. Hefty. Okay? Chart. You've seen those numbers. Now, the proposed 2024-25 budget as written, plus adding back those 7.5% cuts would mean the proposed tax increase would be 1.1 million. And the estimated resident impact would be on property tax would be $85 per year. And for businesses, $154 per year. That's just the property tax increase. That's a 25%, about 24.5% property tax increase. Now, when you add into that, okay, that scenario, and you add into that what the cost would be for all the other things. You got infrastructure at $120, you got the 2 water and sewer requirements. Most residents in Roy would see a $219 per year increase, both tax and fee, okay? Business would see a $288. Residents living on the east side of 910 would see a $249 increase per year, and businesses operating on that would see over $300 a year increase, okay? Chart. Okay. So let's have a conversation. You know about those 7.5% cuts. Do you want to change any of those cuts? Or do we let the cuts stand as written? Any questions? Any comments?
What is your cuts, Michelle? What is it you're cutting with all that? I can't remember what all you.
Sure, so the aquatic center was some maintenance, item from the maintenance side, so fencing, decking repairs, plumbing repairs, things like that would be in there. On the operations side, it was deck furniture and things like that. We did not get a rate increase for the chemicals, which the chemical prices have gone up. So it would leave a gap in that. Same thing for the complex, a gap in that. And then in recreation and parks, it's the fertilizer, the tree program, recreation, cut back on the free community events.
So you still will run the aquatic center, I mean, safe and clean,
Yes.
but just we haven't had new furniture down there for a while anyway, have you? Yeah, because I go down there. It looks old to me, but I mean, it functions. But you still obviously have to have the chemicals. You can't let people swim in it.
Yeah.
But the fertilization, so you would just do 1 fertilization a year instead of 2 or,
2 or 3 or
and just cut down all the trees? Can you still cut down all the dead trees and just not replace them?
so the trees that in-house we can cut down, we would. Any
Yeah.
safety ones, obviously we would. But some of the bigger ones
You have to
may
hire-
have to wait
Yeah.
just because we don't have the equipment to do those ones, things like that.
And then what would you cut at the complex?
Well, the complex, again, that's also the chemicals
Mhm.
we have to run, but we did not currently have an increase for those chemicals. It would be the auxiliary program, special events and things like that that they run there.
best I can tell, between Parks and Recreation, Roy Days and Aquatic Center and your recreation complex, you were well over almost $200,000 in cuts. And some of the other ones, not quite as much, okay? But we didn't remove any bodies. And under this budget, they got their merit and they got their COLA and 4% benefit under this budget. Do we do anything with the 7.5? Or are you okay to let the 7.5% as written and proposed remain in the budget?
Well, some of that stuff may not be year to year. It might be one time. With the proposal of potentially selling one or two properties, we could put some money back into the budget that could cover some of the non-human capital. Human capital, you have to be careful funding it with a one-time purchase because human capital is perpetual. A one-time purchase is not. So, you know, if fertilizing the parks or adding, chemicals, can those be bought off of the sale of a property? That we don't have to make the decision today, but if we sell the property, we can work that back into the budget and do, a quarterly budget adjustment.
I'm just indicating too, when I put those properties in the conversation, the purpose was more about trying to, Joel, see if we can generate a continual revenue stream so that we can find a solution that's going to keep feeding a revenue into Matt's budget. The reason for
We're
that,
gonna get into property management and build things ourselves. That's a little tough.
many cities around us own property and manage it, and that revenue goes into the RDA. That's correct. So to your point, the point would be is that, and I don't know if I'd necessarily like to be in that because I think there is a reason for separation of government and private business. But I'm suggesting to you is that I don't see any new revenue stream or increase in property or sales tax revenue coming to Roy. Even if right now, if Brody, he was to put that $80-90 million development downtown, 2 years before he will see anything out of that. And that's 2 years. Then you got to figure out when they're completed, get into this property tax increase that would come from that. And then under the TIF process, he's only going to get a portion of that. So to me, unless we've got big, Matt, I think this is how, Amber, you know this better than I do. The big money makers in sales tax revenue in Roy City are going to be grocery stores. They're going to be these developments of selling a lot of merchandise and get the sales tax.
And I don't see any big box retails coming to Roy.
No. And when's the hotel? That's what you're talking about, the $90 million?
Mhm.
When's the hotel?
No, that's, yeah,
Oh,
this is the Woodbury.
oh, the Woodbury, yeah.
And nobody wants to bite off a hotel right now because your interest rates are so high.
You see the problem? And yet we still have to find a way to pay the employees a fair price in order for us to retain the skills. I would accept every department head, Brandon, you too, would honestly say that if you do not take care of the employees, and I'm not talking about new employees, I'm talking about the employees we have working for us today, you don't take care of them, you'll find somebody else to take care of. And my frustration is we'll become a training ground again, and I lived through that since I've been elected office, and that's a terrible position to be in. So we have to make sure we set the priority that simply says the employees are important and we try to match or be fair in terms of what we provide. And I think under the budget that's proposed, Matt and team has provided what appears to be a budget that does the best it can to retain our employees. And still, to be honest with you, that could change. Chief, I will tell you, you were here, I'm sure, at the time. I remember in January in a city council meeting. I don't know if I was mayor at the time, I'm a city council. And the chief walked in and told Matt, and it went into a special city council meeting that simply says, if I don't change the pay on my police officers, This is like a December, January. I mean, we were supposed to wait until we got to June. If we don't have an emergency adjustment to how we pay people our place off, we're gonna lose more of them, and we were losing them. And the city council went in for the police department and paid that requirement. Carl stood up there and he simply says, we're in hard times. And we got it. He had no choice. It's either that or become a training ground again. So my point to the conversation is, today I think we've got a pretty good plan. But I can't guarantee you this plan's gonna last 6 months. Because in all fairness, other cities, a little further away from Roy, are raising their public safety salaries.
Well, you have cities around us that are doing anywhere from a 15 to a 25% tax increase too.
I understand.
We will potentially at 12% be the lowest city that anywhere in our area. Ogden's not, but Ogden has such a revenue stream that they can get away with it.
But
We
they're-
were the
but this-
lowest last year too, weren't we at 10%?
But even Ogden, when if they're announced, they're gonna do 1% this year, and I never thought that would happen. Okay, are you okay to leave the 7.5% cuts proposed in the budget as written? Any questions on that? Okay,
I would say with the caveat that if revenue changes, we can sell some properties. You know, if we can change our revenue throughout the year, the next quarter, next 6 months, that we go back and address and find the critical ones that we need to fund.
Joe, I will indicate to you is, the council can do whatever they like. If Matt's data comes in and basically shows that he in fact's got more revenue than projected and there might be opportunities that it can be spent, council can do whatever they want to do. I'm just gonna say to you is that at this moment, okay, you gotta make a tough decision about what we're gonna do about a property tax and a fee increase. And as proposed, our residents gonna take a heavy hit.
I don't think we have a choice on the fee increase. Property tax, it depends on how much you want to raise taxes.
That's the question you have to ask. So, using your comment that you said, anytime along the path, Matt, okay, unless you tell me otherwise, you start generating more revenue, you certainly, Amber could come in and do a modification to the budget, and we could then look at other ways to spend money if it's available. Is that a fair statement?
The first statement.
Okay. So to your point, Joel, I think you can. Personally, I hope we have that opportunity.
Well, I think if we sell some property, I'm not against looking at getting into property. Well, I am, but I really don't want to, city should not be into property management, in my opinion. Dennis Brown ought to be into property management. We ought to be into, if we have property and can work with a developer to develop it and we sell the property, then we increase our housing, we increase some property taxes, we increase residents that spend more. I think that's the best way to do it.
Joe, I don't disagree with you, but I will tell you this, if you look at downtown Ogden and look at who owns a lot of that ground downtown, it's the Ogden RDA.
I get it, but newsflash, we will never have a Farmington station or a junction in Roy, Utah.
No.
It's not mathematically possible unless you wiped out blocks of something and redeveloped whole sections. We don't have anywhere we can put anything that big.
Because the main sections, the people are in a trust and they won't sell it.
Yeah, you can't even get the current property owner that owns places to develop, to make something decent, to want to do anything with it, so.
Yeah.
Well, then that puts a lot of burden on Brody because economic or community development is in his charter. And the issue is that he's the one that basically is going to lead the way in terms of how we redevelop this community. It's his responsibility. So my comment would be is help him. And if that means we do a road trip, we do that. Randy, you were there this morning or today. I asked Brody an important question. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I meet with the CEO of Woodbury. He'll be in my office. And with him and Northrop Grumman, we're gonna have a come to Jesus meeting about what we gotta do to make the work. If what we have to do is get in a bus or get in Matt's car and we drive to Salt Lake, we go visit that, make sure Brody's there. in an effort to try to drum up business, then let's get in those cars and let's make that happen.
I think we're ready. I mean, Brody busted his tail end to get the CRA done and the potential, for funding in there, and Woodbury hasn't done diddly.
Well, one last comment, and that's a good point on that property. Tuesday night, the planning commission basically approved what to do with that Woodbury property that's sitting in front of Harmon's.
The old China buffet, they're gonna put in a Wells Fargo and a Cafe Rio.
Okay,
Oh,
I
they
think
are.
that's a positive move.
I knew
Yeah.
Wells Fargo, but I didn't know Cafe Rio. Oh,
I mean, just the tax money that you're gonna get out of the Skadden family is gonna be.
yeah.
No, I'm not saying they're money makers.
But, I mean, that's a portion of their property.
Yeah.
They need to crack the big one.
Well,
And they've needed to crack the big one for 10 years.
And tomorrow, Taylor Woodbury is now the CEO. Him and I will have that conversation.
Yeah, because they came in and we approved everything and then
Mm-hmm.
it's just sitting.
And he's not the only one. There was a couple other got approved, and to be honest with you, haven't seen them crack ground either. We just have to work at it. Okay. You're skirting the question, so I want to make sure we're okay. Leave those in there as proposed. Is that okay?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we have any other choice because we can't raise taxes higher.
Sure. Hey, we're getting there. Okay. Now, these are items not found in the proposed budget that were requested by the department heads. Now, during the Roy sit-in, this is important because I think this is where we're going to find some conversation. During the city council budget work session on the 21st of May, the city manager provided information on those elements of the proposed budget that were discussed by staff and not included. These elements included mostly personnel increase requests by department heads. Through a venting process, and I mentioned this, how we'll do this, and based on most of the city council members having interest to have further discussion, only those following elements, okay, are included in this presentation. Meaning is all the other ones that are not in here, the majority of the council recommended they did not want to have a further conversation. That's the fact. So we're only going to address that which you wanted to talk about. As in this element, we believe there's an additional $168,000. If you say we need to move forward with some of these, another $168,000 increase would be realized, okay, on the budget. Now, note, any changes, Joe, to your point, any changes in the personnel numbers by adding more employees will result in higher costs. These increased costs are not a one-time event, but will continue every year as long as the employee works for the city. These additional costs include not only salary, but benefits for full-time employees. It is also includes yearly merit increase, pay increases, as well as COLA. This proposed budget includes salaries and benefit increases of 9.75 for general employees and 10.75 for public safety. Amber, what I simply did was this. This was a percentage. I added the percentages of what that was going to be for, just took the raw numbers, the percentage to include the 4% of the health benefit. It's in the proposal. So if you take the 3% COLA, the 3.75, I'm using public safety, 3.75, and then the 4%, that would give me the top of about where that come in at 10.75. Are you okay with that number? Just, I know it's aggregate, but it was important just to recognize that we.
4% additional that we're paying, but they're paying as well.
It's also just off the health insurance costs and not the total employee cost.
I understand, but because it in fact is something the city is paying full or in part to, I wanted to make sure that we understand that whatever we do in terms of changing the personnel numbers, those changes in personnel numbers have this, and I kind of put the ceiling of what we see that impact going to be. As proposed, the increase would be anywhere from 9.5% or 10.75% for public safety. If my numbers are off, I'm okay with that. My intent to this is not to say it's bad, good, or I'm just saying is what it says. Moving employees from part-time to full-time does have a direct impact on total cost to operate the city.
Yes, you're 100%. When you get a benefited employee, it's more expensive.
Okay, so with that tone, next chart. So now this is a list of basically, and we need to come back and look at these, but I want to make sure I capture everything. To the extent of things that are not here, let me make this clear, that are not here, the majority of the council basically says they did not want to continue the conversation. So if it's here, the majority of you said that one. So I'm going to walk through these and then we're going to come back and we can address them individually if you want. Okay, so next chart, this is the janitor one, okay, for Public Works, Brandon. This is the police one in terms of 2 full-time bailiffs going in for 2 part-time bailiffs. Next one. This one's the fire rescue full-time building clerk, okay? Next one. This is the public education team overtime, chief, so you kind of know what's in to get through. And then this one, park and rec, this is your recreational supervisor one, Michelle, that you asked. Next chart. Then we're going to come back to this, so don't give up on me here. Now, best guess, the additional $168,000, which if we took every one of those, then would be added to the proposed $500,000 property tax increase. Because you got to come up with the money somewhere. Setting aside the discussion about selling you state property or city property, just the fact it's got to come from somewhere. And that would equate to about $668,000 estimated. The impact with just that increase in proposed property tax then would be $51, okay, 0.8 per year for residents and businesses at $94. Now, when you put that into and add that 16% property tax, and so before it was 12%, but adding that puts it up to 16%, then what you're looking at is when you include that with also these personnel actions plus the utility enterprise fund increases, the cost to the resident, most residents would be $185 a year, businesses $228 a year. The residents living off the west side, Randy, would be $216 a year, and the business operating on the east side of 1900 will go up to $259,000 a year. These are estimates, just trying to pull the numbers so you get kind of a visual. Next chart. Now, everything that we just talked about. If you want to continue, let's go back now. If you'll slide me back to the very first person, I want to start with the janitor. I need to get your thoughts and we can have a discussion about this particular proposed increase, okay, in the salary of this employee. Brandon, I think I captured what I could out of the conversation from last meeting, but I think in order for us, the council, to really understand what you would like to do here, I think you need to repeat what you're thinking you want this for.
So, yeah, like I stated in the previous meeting, is this janitor, and I know her duties probably haven't changed since we hired a cleaning company. And that's probably when we probably should address this. So when we hired the cleaning company, initially, we got rid of 4 full-time janitors. And the cleaning company took care of that. And this probably should have been addressed when we did that, because now this janitor, she requires no supervision. She goes and handles so the cleaning company takes care of the bulk of it, but she goes and kind of critiques things, and whatever issues come up throughout the day, she goes and handles. And like I said, I think this is such a minimal cost, and this is kind of what we hit on before, is we're trying to keep good employees. And I think this is a pretty minimal thing. And I know that the parks bring this up, and their thing is, if this is really a big deal, we'll figure it out within our budget and fund it from with what we have. Whether I gotta cut a little bit of part-time money, because to me, she's way more valuable than a part-time.
Coordinating with the company that's doing the janitorial work and that.
So she'll go out, she'll do her day-to-day stuff, and then she'll reach out to the foreman, and then he'll coordinate with the cleaning company. But yeah,
Like what businesses, like, I don't understand, like exactly the Public Works building and what buildings.
All of our
she
buildings.
does all the
All of our-
buildings, yeah,
So
throughout. the
every
whole-
building, she's goes, like, what hours does she work?
So she comes in at 4 to noon, 4 in the morning, because she has to come in and do the complex. Just
So, and
run
so,
through
and
the
then,
complex
so
first thing.
once we open the complex, she'll make sure whoever's cleaning it is doing a good job.
Yeah, I mean, she checks up on them, and then like I said, there's some minimal things, especially that we gotta cut out of the cleaning company's scope of work, because we have to cut budgets. So there's more areas that she's gonna have to step up and cover as well, because with cutting the budget, I'm sure we're gonna have to cut the cleaning company's scope of work.
So she not only checks on it and points out what they're not doing right, she'll clean it
Clean it
herself
out, yeah.
if it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
She
And-
cleans the pool.
Yeah,
She's
she
the
cleans
one
the
that
pool
does
every
pool
morning and
So it's ready for the lap swimmers and stuff.
Yeah.
How long has she been with us again?
she's close to 10 years. I should have probably pulled it, but yeah. And the kind of the sad reality is I checked her wage and she barely makes over what our bottom end operator makes, which I think's low as well. I think we start out at 1706 and she's right there in that range, just a hair more than that.
Been here 6 years, Brandon.
6 years. So. Feels like a lot.
And round up.
Feels-
It's
feels-
not
feels-
accounting, it's
feels
in
like-
public works.
Thanks, Amber.
6.4.
So is she like a mom and has a family and everything?
Yeah, she actually has a handicapped daughter that and that's part of the schedule too, that we work with her as well.
Now, in addition to the 25, she'd be eligible for the COLA and the merit.
Yeah,
That's so minimal.
I mean, yeah, you're basically talking a dollar. an
Yeah,
hour.
you're talking like the 3.5% COLA, that's $70, $70. I'm in favor of it. I don't see why not. I mean, just for the fact that she's stuck with us and been around with us for as long as she has, that at least in my mind justifies that. And if you have to cut somebody's wage, take it out of,
Somebody's got to clean up after the babies in the pool.
that's true too. That is true too.
I'm all for it.
I'm game. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Sophie,
Yep, that's fine.
Brian?
Yeah, that works.
Ann?
Yeah, now that I've heard more about what her duties are, at first I was like, yeah, I wasn't for it, but now that I've
Yeah.
heard more and she's that dedicated and does a good job and makes sure once we get things done at the complex and, cause I just wanna make sure someone looks after that and takes good care of it. And if she's gonna do that, then it's worth that to me.
Yeah, and it gives us a conduit
Yep.
with the company.
Yeah.
Well, just so you guys don't misunderstand, I see department heads in this room that ultimately are responsible to ensure their facilities are clean. And if there is any of that is not being done, they should be contacting Matt and telling him that the contractor's not doing their job.
Right.
I appreciate the fact is this individual is in fact providing a service, but ultimate responsibility, unless you're changing their duty job description, she's just doing it because she's there. But ultimate responsibility to ensure that the contract is being executed to what's written in the contract is a management issue, not her issue.
Yeah, but she's hands on deck. She's there, I mean, so.
That she's the stopgap if we need something during the middle of the day that they haven't fulfilled. And then it's the corrective action that she escalates to you and then you go back to the contracting company. So.
Or I ask the harder question is, if this position was vacant because of some circumstances, would you in fact consider taking that position and rolling that under the existing contract and let a contractor do all that?
I think when we initially, so I wasn't the one that made that change. I wasn't the administrator that did that. It did save a lot of money, but the original intent is that when they go through the buildings and stuff, they don't clean everything. They come through by contract and vacuum and garbages, but they're not washing walls. So they wanted a floater person to be able to go in and do the deep clean too. So they go over the Hope Center and do different tasks or the pool and do a different task that the cleaning company, either one was gonna charge us too much money for, or two, just kind of pick up the slack of what wasn't in that contract.
Because I was here when the conversation come up that simply says with the vacancy of the janitorial positions, the conversation is, should we basically consider putting it on contract?
And it saved, I think, $150-ish thousand.
And so with that decision, 3 or 4 years ago, that decision saved $150 some odd $1,000 a year. That's significant. So I'm not saying you want to do that with this. The council seems to be leaning towards the fact is just give the person the janitorial 1 or janitorial 2 position. I'm sensing it might very well because they're a good person, they're doing a good job. But Brandon, I'm not so sure, to be honest with you, we're changing their job description. The harder question is, should the job description be changed to accommodate what they're really doing? Because if that's the case, Matt, then my mind's eye, you might be underpaying her because the duties and responsibilities are broader than what we think she should be doing. And more importantly, that job description should reflect what they're doing is, and they should get credit for what they're doing.
I think you said you should have changed it back.
Yeah, and just to touch on that a little bit as well, I know Ryan actually reached out to the cleaning company to add other duties just for the complex alone, and they came back at almost close to $60,000, a little over $60,000 just to add the complex.
Stuff
duties.
that she's
So
doing.
she probably doesn't even make that cost in the city. and
This
She
is
does
where the
the full.
assessment has to be looked at all sides. It says, is this the best value? So, I would say council seems to be supportive of it, Matt. Here's the hard part. Management has an obligation to simply match the person's performance and the job duties to what their job description is. If Brandon or his supervisor is changing the complexion of that, then you need to seriously think about modifying the job description so it's effectively says what this person's expected.
And I think that's fair.
Should be.
Yeah.
Labor standards, labor laws will probably say that's what we should do, so.
Yeah.
Okay, chart. Okay, police is asking then take 2 full-time bailiffs, okay, and basically, that take 2 part-time bailiffs, make them full-time. And when they're not in the justice court, they'll basically be out doing other police operations. Council, comments?
It's a tough one because it's human capital and it's year after year.
Yep.
I've talked to the police chief in great detail about this multiple times. We're paying $100,000 for a service because we can't keep part-timers in here. I don't know that adding 2 is feasible. I proposed adding 1. Maybe combining the 2 part-times and funding it as a full-time position. Pulling equipment out of the, coffers. I do think we need to do something. I just don't know that we can afford to do 2 full-time people without a bigger tax increase.
Well, so the question I would ask basically would be is, how often is the justice court in session?
Every day.
22.5 hours per week on average, but that depends upon whether or not they're having trials.
So you're looking at part-time, roughly 20 hours a week.
22 and a half is the average. It can be as low as 20, it can be as high as 25. That's how we came to the 22. Right now, the way we got to the part-time salary, which is well below what it should be, is when that position was originally negotiated and funded, it was given $65,000 to cover 2 part-timers. Taking that into account, we determined that each employee would be given about, I think it was like $25, $26 an hour. In talking with Councilman Paul about this, that 123 is, correct me if I'm wrong, Amber, but that's the personnel and the equipment, right? And so,
Separated.
I think the 123 was the 123 plus the 65 that you already have. Is the
that's
personnel.
plus the 65. So if we did just the one full-time, some of the other duties they were gonna be asked to do, they would not be able to do because it requires 2 people. Those are the APMP checks, those are the sex offender checks, those are the warrant service, which all those can have a return on investment. If we had one full-time bailiff and then we kept the other position part-time, in order to get someone to actually fill that, we would absolutely need to raise that, the wage. And then we would still need to keep that overtime money available until we get that position filled, but either bailiff are still gonna require time off. And so those are gonna be backfilled with employees that are getting paid overtime.
So do your policemen do it now? I mean,
Yes,
they
they
just
do.
all rotate. And could they still keep doing that?
It's becoming a burden. We have one guy that's getting burned out, and so he's gonna go leave. He's applying for another agency. He can do a 40-hour work week and make $5 more an hour than what he's making now, doing this, working part-time at another agency and taking additional overtime shifts.
So Chief, I guess my question I would ask you would be is, in your opinion, certainly there would be some benefit if they were full-time, but I'm sensing that one of the challenge you have is that the part-time pay we're paying for the bailiffs is not adequate. Correct. And if we were to make that adequate, would that solve your problem?
I don't know. I can tell you the people entering law enforcement typically right now, we're seeing younger folks coming in. The lateral market is just about dried up. Folks coming into law enforcement, or at least that are contacting us, are looking for full-time jobs.
That's why I recommended at least one full-time and then fund the other out of overtime.
So really, we're back to $123,000 because it's already got 63,000. If we're gonna add more overtime so you can hire somebody else.
But that 65 is including half of that FTE. So what I'm saying is increase one of the FTEs and use the rest of that as overtime money.
Council, just so there's no confusion, right below this one in that chart was all the equipment that the chief needed in order for him to be able to support the 2 full-time bailiffs. You basically didn't think that was important to carry that conversation in here. So just recognize if you go with this move, then there's a piece the chief is going to be expecting to come out of that that simply says, well, what about all the equipment I'm going to need? Because that was also a request that he put in this conversation, and you've elected not to carry that conversation into this meeting.
But isn't our purview here just to do what's the ongoing and not necessarily, because it's gonna be a one-time equipment cost versus it's.
It's whatever the chief says it is. He just basically says there's a couple of things here that got a problem. I captured more importantly, what he says is we're not paying our bailiffs part-time enough. And that's gonna create a real problem for him to retain that.
I think I'm with him that finding part-time in law enforcement, the reserve program's gone away. I mean,
But he also
I don't
said-
think it's like fire where you pick up different shifts, different different agencies and stuff like that. It's,
We also said, Joe, he basically said that I still have to put somebody else here. So even if you give me one per part-time, or you give me one full-time, I gotta have somebody else there because the job was a 2-person job.
I get it, but you have to rotate people in. I mean, I can say nothing at all, or I can say, let's try to compromise and do one. I'm trying to compromise, but if we don't want to compromise, it's not 2 or nothing. I'm trying to say.
Because what I'm saying to you is we're getting by. I'm just trying to figure out how we're gonna pick up without adding more debt or more cost to the taxpayer in terms of taxpayer costs on a property tax. Can in fact we breathe this a little bit longer until we can generate the revenue to pay for this? Because right now, the only way you're gonna pay for this is you're gonna have to raise taxes.
I get it.
Okay, have we raised taxes enough, or are we gonna have to still a limit on this before we get there?
Well, we've already said anything over the 500,000 is additional. That's what I'm trying to figure out. If we can whittle it down, what's the additional? You said 168. I'm trying to get that down even less than 168. By saying I would fund one full-time position, not 2. I guess we can say, don't do anything. Let's keep doing what we're doing, and it's not working, so why would we?
Well, wait a minute, you can't say it's not working, because first I hadn't heard the courts have basically stopped.
I will say it's
I mean,
unsustainable.
the end of the day
You
is,
just said it's not sustainable.
but it's not been sustainable for how many years?
So the position was created before COVID. COVID happened, and then the positions were never filled. So we didn't know what we didn't know. Now that the court is running, we now know that it's not working. And so
So does every single policeman in your department rotate?
Who is a bailiff?
it's,
Is
right
it-
now it's voluntary, but they do rotate as a bailiffs if we have to. We have detectives go cover, but that means their cases aren't getting worked. We have sergeants coming in, so their stuff isn't getting done. Captains, I've done bailiff shifts.
You don't have enough volunteers to cover it.
At times we don't. That's why myself and the captains are taking up some of those shifts.
These are hard decisions. But at the end of the day is that there's a cost to all this. And I'm just saying is make sure you balance this out because this particular request right now is this significant preponderance of the extra $168,000 that we basically are looking for. If you agreed to basically include into the budget these additional bodies.
How many sex offenders do we have in the community?
I don't have my computer on me, but I think it was like one for every 300 residents. We have over 100.
And then how many, parole?
That's a one for every 144 residents.
So even more. And the part-time aspect of that, correct me if I'm wrong, in the conversations we had was to also go through and make sure we're tracking those, making sure we have updated contact information and that they're all following proper process and procedure, correct?
So Weber County has probably, if not the highest, one of the highest offender per capita rates in the state, especially when it comes to APMP. And if you've been watching the news, they've been put through the ringer with legislative audits. They're having staffing issues. They cannot maintain their caseload. There's actually discussion, and I don't know where this goes. It's very infant, but there's discussion about actually putting a legislative cap on what a caseload per agent looks like. Because they're not getting it done. And so we have people in our community who are felons, who are not being supervised. And so the message that this is going to send is we have people that are in the courts and they're going to be actively watching. They'll be working with APMP. We're not going to do this autonomously, but they're going to be checking on these folks. A lot of them have a propensity to recidivate. And so we want them to know that we're going to be keeping an eye on them. And that was the whole idea behind this. The other issue was the traffic issue. When they have downtime, be visible, right? That's the biggest complaint. You guys see that a lot as a council. We have guys on patrol that are going call to call. They're not doing traffic control. So this gives us an opportunity to at least get something back with these positions.
As in the rest of the traffic thing too, so, okay.
I'm gonna add costs. Property tax increase.
I mean,
How much is one gonna cost us? If we took
So each,
half of if we took one part-time FTE and elevated it, so you're not hiring a full-time, you're taking a half and you're increasing it to full-time. I mean, there's gonna be a little bit of,
the whole part-time,
Well, for two, it'd be 65 plus the 123.
yeah, because each employee is about 99,500. We have 74,000 in part-time wages. For the bailiff. So if you applied all of the part-time to one full-time officer, you would need another 26,000.
that's what I was thinking, 30,000. So instead of being 123,000, you're 30,000.
Would that work for you if you had?
As long as I had enough to cover the part-time.
the part and the
or
overtime.
Overtime costs until we get that position filled or when they're not available. That still has to be covered in addition to this.
Don't we also have, correct me if I'm wrong, what's our contract with Weber School District, SRO? Don't we have extra monies coming in, trickling in over the course of the next couple of years?
That contract did go up and I got an email today from the schools. I don't know what's happening the next year, but that's something we're constantly reevaluating. That did give us an additional, I think it was $200-some thousand annually, but Amber can speak to that better than I can.
Did you hear that, Amber?
No, we're crunching numbers over here.
Crunch your numbers, then we'll come back to that.
Because if you left half of the part-time wages to try to fund another half person.
Full-time person with benefits.
So you would need-
So what we're saying is if you added one, you still have to keep the half of the part-time budget for the
Part-time
1 day.
plus overtime.
You have two bailiffs.
Well, the half of the part-time could be either a part-time or use that money as overtime.
Right, but you still have to keep that money there.
I get
Then
it.
you add the full-time, so we're trying to calculate.
But so there's no confusion. The original request, there were $22,800 of equipment that was needed, that the chief said he needed to make sure we hired the bailiffs. It was in the proposal. So the question is that it's not just the fact that you're benefiting, you also have to look.
Find enough equipment in your arsenal.
That's actually a good question. If the 7.5% wasn't cut, I could absolutely absorb that. With the 7.5% being cut, I cannot absorb that because we lost half of our equipment budget.
Yeah, I see your cuts.
So there again, equipment would be a one-time purchase. Could we fund that out of if we sell a property or something? I'm just looking for ways to try to compromise.
Joe, I don't disagree with your thought process. I'm just saying is that this is one of a hard conversation to have. The question is that are we going to add to the property tax increase or not? Is it going to be 500,000 or 500 plus? That's at the end of the day, what's going to be coming out of
We
this.
just said 200 or 2,500 for him, so it's already 500 plus.
And you're making these decisions. And when you get to the end of this conversation, what comes out of this is probably another $100,000. And you're gonna make that a $600,000 decision for property tax increase and not a 500,000. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Well, it didn't seem like it was a problem to put $950,000 into the complex that citizens and people held us hostage for, which wasn't the best business decision. It was a community decision. This is also a community decision.
No. Don't do this to me. Let me make this absolutely clear. We had a conversation that basically talked about $750,000 back pay. 6 months after that, we put a 10% property tax increase on this society. We did not need that cost.
You could say the same thing. We didn't need the complex cost that's now putting a property tax increase on
When
the city.
this council decided to basically allow a fundraising project to happen, you set in motion the inevitable.
We
Now,
said
if you
that
didn't
too.
want that, you should have voted against it.
I did.
Perfect. You can now stand in front of everybody and say, I am now the victim. But at the end of the day, that decision went forward. And as a result of that decision, we now have that bill. And you want to talk about costs? You ain't seen costs yet. When she fires that up, I guarantee you the costs are going to come back. And that's going to be $300,000 to $400,000 loss every year. That's the facts. It is what it is. Michelle, it's a service. If the city council don't like it, put it on the market, sell it, and let somebody run it for us.
Bailiff is a service. We're mandated to perform a bailiff service.
And the question we have to ask ourselves, Joel, is a conversation that simply says, is now the time to do that? If the revenue stream comes in, then come back to the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna hire a full-time bailiff when he comes back and gets a report that the money increase is coming. Otherwise, today it's 500,000 and it's going to be at least 500,000 or more next year. And I almost guarantee you the next 3 years, or at least next 2 years, you're gonna be facing the exact same thing until this economy turns around. These are hard choices. I'm saying to you is if you can hold off on everything else, then I would ask you to simply tell Matt to simply says this, when he can show you and 2 other council members that we've got an increase in sales tax that allows him to, or Brody goes and says, I just landed the deal that's gonna bring more revenue in the city to pay for it, then I would say to you is, Chief, he gets the first dollar that we make. And he will have the number of people he needs. I'm okay with that. But just recognize, I do not see over the next couple of years a solution unless something changes. I just don't see it. And we
That's
can
why I'm
certainly,
asking for numbers, so we can make a decision.
I think I just seen it was 600 some odd, or $65,000. And there's a $22,000 increase in equipment that we haven't talked about, because I looked at the police chief's budget, and he took a heavy hit. And the thing that I heard from the last meeting was, he's gonna have to worry about ammunition so he can basically do his training. But this is absolutely crazy.
So basically $88,000 then with equipment
Yep,
and
for the one full-time.
for the one full.
Will be 22,000 in equipment.
No, that would be split in half, so.
It's $11,000.
10, 11.
So
That covers
seven-
radio, taser, body camera, vest, handgun, like all
Yeah, yeah.
What's the total number?
74,000 something. maybe?
Okay. So we're gonna add $84,000 if we go with one. Is that what I heard?
74.
74.
74,000 to go with one. What do you want to do, council?
I think we've got to continue to talk, because what are the other things that we have to decide, yes or no?
Right here. We have 3 more right after this, so we'll go walk through them. And I'd like to get that done before you have to leave. So, Brian, what do you want to do? What's on the table right now is to add one full-time bailiff to this. Keep the
I-
part-time going.
I
and add-
do not want to grow the tax increase. I just don't.
Okay.
I got more guff this past weekend that we were even thinking about it. And let alone, it's gonna be another double-digit tax increase on the very people that we have promised we would watch over their money. And that's hard for some people.
Okay.
And that's how I feel.
Okay, got that? Randy? We think we have an option on the table to put one bailiff instead of two. What do you want to do?
I would honestly say fund both full-time bailiffs. Why? Because they get out and they engage with our community. This is not something that our community has not continually told us that we need to do, and that's traffic enforcement. As the father of a teenage daughter, it scares me crapless to know that there are sex offenders that are out there in our local community that aren't being properly tracked. And just the safety aspect of that, with us not going through and at least at a bare minimum, giving our police the ability to better watch over those types of individuals who are out in our community just makes me absolutely sick.
Okay.
So
And-
I'm two full-time bailiffs is where I'm at.
Pam, your comments.
So with one full-time bailiff, will you be able to go out and do more tracking with just one full-time?
We don't send them to do that stuff by themselves.
Mhm.
They're in the courtroom together. They would be out doing that together.
So they don't take another officer with them to do any of that?
They
or-
would only be able to take another officer with them if that other officer isn't tied up on other calls. So the only thing they would actually be able to do proactively on their own outside of this is typically just going to be traffic.
I don't want to raise the taxes any higher neither, but I just feel like if I have teenage granddaughters that live in Roy.
Yeah.
But I just tell them, be careful, don't park by any vans. I don't know.
But, and that's the thing is they're not in vans. These are people that
Oh,
that
I
could
know.
potentially be your neighbor and you don't even know it.
Well, yeah, I know all my neighbors pretty good, but I feel if we try one and then if we get some extra money, then maybe, I don't know, it's a hard decision. I mean, I live in Roy too, and I'm gonna, not work one day and it's my tax increase also. So, but it's just really a hard decision to make. Sophie, what do you think?
Well, there you go, Ann. That's, Sophie, you have a comment on this?
So I'm not comfortable 1, 2, or none right now. I'd like to see what the other proposals, I think you said you had 2 other slides on here as well. To say I'm comfortable with 2, no. Am I comfortable to say, again, you would be one of the first if we had an extra chunk of money to throw it this way first, but I would like to see the other 2 slides past this before I said none or 1 or 2.
You want to hold on?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to this, Sophie. I think it's a good point. Next chart, and then we'll come back and circle back on this one. This is a full-time billing clerk. Chief, kind of give us an idea a little bit about this. I know I remember hearing you say about it, but you want to make move from part-time to a full-time. Go on.
Yeah, so we're, it's best practice to have someone does what's the quality assurance and quality of medical reports. I've done a little digging in to see when we started this. This started back when Jason Polston was here. And we've steadily seen an increase in our collection rates because of putting somebody on that detail of making sure that the medical reports are being completed appropriately. What's happening is we're seeing the insurance companies are kicking back a lot of these reports if they're not done a really specific and good quality, which means that we're not going to get as well as on the billing side of a return. For instance, like we're dealing with Stewart, who owes us over almost $400,000. That's a lot of money that they owe Roy City. Those are things that can be missed if we're not having somebody, we just don't have enough staffing to put an eye to it. She's part-time, that also means with the call quantity that's gone up, I mean, we ran over 6,000 calls. That's not necessarily transports. But the amount of calls that we're now running requires more workload. Another part of that is the collections. I talked to Talia the other day about how much time that it takes as she starts looking into the collections, meaning she's working with Express and Bonneville, who we typically use for those collections. We need somebody to keep an eye on those collections and make sure that we're following up with those two companies to make sure we're getting that back. Another, I just got noticed the other day that Centura owes us $170,000. And and this is what's really hard, me as a fire chief and Ty doing her job, somebody has to put an eye to this to make sure we're following up. I sent an email to Matt Wilson on this. We need really a focus to make sure that we're getting the returns as we do the workload. And so this position here is going to make sure that we continue to do the billing process and we're getting those returns on the collections. And so it's not just that. When Talia's gone, she was gone for 2 weeks. We have nobody to staff the office. And so, again, it's just a need that we have due to the workload, maybe more importantly, to make sure we're getting that collections on these ambulance transports. So that is absolute revenue that we will miss out on if we're not doing an exceptional job to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are on it, because she catches a lot of things that aren't done. So, I believe I understand there's a cost to it. I understand where we're at with all this discussion, but I can show you, I can't give you exact numbers, but we know that the quality of the bills that she's, and the things that she's capturing is a direct reflection of what we're going to collect. And that comes into the general fund. And so I believe that, this will pay for itself. If the quality goes down now, she's going to do a great job. The part of the problem is she goes on the weekend, she gets her hours in. There's a huge chunk of workload. Typically, when a workload increases so dramatically, that sometimes that quality, she's trying to do the best she can, but there's a lot of workload that this will help with Talia with on this side and both sides, and it'll be really helpful in our department. And we've operated like this with one part-time for over 15 years. So I think it's time that this gets addressed and we can make this improvement to our department.
The question I'd ask you, Amber, on this particular issue, $26,000. What I don't know in this conversation is how much is the part-time hours? Typically, you say part-time, that's 20 hours a work week, but anything under 40 is considered part-time. Is that correct?
We limit it to $1,560 a year because of the health insurance rules with Obamacare.
Okay, so
So that's 29.
about 29 hours.
Mhm.
So is she at 29 hours a week?
Yeah.
And you can't pay overtime to a part-time? If she
If
goes
she
over
worked
20.
over 40 hours a week, then yes, but you'd have a look back period that she can't work over 29 hours a week, or we have to offer her medical insurance.
We don't have no one that backs her up, so Talia's not really trained to do that. We could use what we used before was typically captains or battalion chiefs. So they're trying to do their job as running calls, managing the department of the day. It would have to be kicked down to them. So it really takes a keen eye and really someone who's dedicated to doing that position.
Amber just stated that she was budgeted at 25 hours a week. That's on average how much she works.
Council, the cost is estimated at $26,800. That's the impact.
There are benefits in that, because there was some question about,
There is, the one asterisk is her husband works here, and so she would not take health insurance. So we are saving about 22,000 a year by choosing her. If she were to leave and we replace the position, that would be about $50,000.
So because this is unique to an employee, you just read why you get a benefit.
Right.
That kind of answers the other part of the question, because that seems to be an
Yeah.
awful small amount of money for
Right, because
somebody.
if we're paying 26,000, but collecting 400,000,
That's the point. That's like, just 101.
I can't believe that they owe you 400,000, geez.
That's just the one, and the other one was 170.
Yeah, and that's only, but the one we just got the other day that we need to start jumping on is the Centura that owes us $170,000. That's a small amount there, but the fear is that I got from our billing company, this is following the same path as Stewart, who owes us up to $400,000. So we
Like-
want to make sure that I work and coordinate with Matt Wilson, and that she's also catching this and notifying me so we can jump on it quickly. It's just hard for myself, Chief King, and Tara to be dedicating a lot of time, even though it's so critical and important. There's a lot of needs, and so it's very helpful that she's looking out for our best interest.
Brian,
Well, it sounds like this position pays for itself.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those,
I
it's a
mean-
kind of a no-brainer, yeah.
Yeah, because like you said, if we hired a different one and then we have to pay health insurance.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, so yeah, I think I'm in favor of it.
Joe,
Yeah.
Ann, Randy, Sophie?
I'm for it because it pays for itself. What does make me nervous is, say in 6 months, a year she quits, that makes me a little nervous, but I guess you deal with that at that time.
Yep.
And even then, this is one of those positions you can point back to that their efforts outweigh what we're paying them.
Yeah, I would hope she would bring in a lot more than this, so.
She already
Yeah.
is.
Even all
Yeah.
fairness to you, if I thought for 1 second you can pick up an extra $400,000 and get more money out of it. I'd put
Yep.
you Chiefs, okay, in that job that you did. Yeah.
We're working hard. We've already sent them to collections. We're right in the middle of it now. But and it's sadly, we're one of the ones that worst got hit with this.
Okay.
But I promise you that I know I'm working with Matt, make sure we settle this and collect what we can, so.
So do you still keep doing work with them if they owe you that much money?
Yeah.
We don't really control that piece of it.
Well, and Stewart sold off to Davis.
Yeah, I don't want to get into a long conversation, but
Yeah.
the company's too,
We would need to talk about any of this further in a closed session.
Wow.
Okay, got your message, chart.
Okay.
Okay, chief, walk this one. You need $5,500.
yeah, I just believe that public relations is really critical as we get out with the public, and our clown public education program, who goes to every school, teaches over hundreds and hundreds of kids year to year. This was cut a few years ago, but I believe the outreach, this really is just paying for the individuals who work. They can't do it on duty because they're trying to run calls, so this is paying for the overtime to pay for the team, the public education team, to go out to all the schools, different events throughout the community. They're typically at Roy Days. They go to all their events like or Safe Kids Day that they have every year. So it's just a way, to me, the benefit of having representing Roy City and the fire department in a real positive way and sending these safety messages. I could go on and on about, I mean, I was involved in fire prevention in Ogden City for years. The good that it does for the kids and the community.
I think my comment to you, chief, would be the program is excellent. I've even sat in those programs. My only comment would be is that your department has almost $350,000 set aside for overtime. What is $5,500 going to be? What significance is that? I mean, it's a line item. If you basically says, I'll suck it up and take the $350,000 I already got budgeted and just take that. I mean,
That'd be great if we're going over that, because like last year, we lost 10 individuals. And so to your point, yeah, I wish I could say I could absorb them out, because that would be easy for us. But the trend has been that we're typically going over an overtime budget due to certain circumstances, whether it's injuries, whether it's staffing problems. Well, you're right. If I could take that, that would be an easy solution. Statistically, though, I can only run the numbers that Talia has. I haven't been here long enough. But statistically, for the last five years, we've gone over in that budget. And we need to do a better job of making those adjustments, which we're trying. So yes, it's a small amount that we're asking for. I understand, and questioning, like, why can't we absorb with what we've got?
Is there any grant money available? Because it is education.
No, not for, this is ongoing wages. You can get items, but you
Yeah,
can't
because
get other wages.
I got the equipment donated for
Yeah.
it, sound equipment. but-
You can get those items, but not ongoing wages.
my only comment would be, it's so important that the program is, I wouldn't let $5,500 stop me. But I think to your point would be, is this was simply help buffer an already deficit.
Yes.
Interesting enough, and I'll only say this and then I'll stop talking on this topic. But the issue really is that $348,000, I think you're talking about 2 employees, full-time. And you can say, well, gee, would it be better to pay $350,000 in overtime or have 2 more full-time employees? Maybe you don't need as much overtime.
Correct.
I mean, if you
I
look at
think
the
that's probably
numbers,
why you had two
That's-
employees
that's what I
originally in the budget.
Yeah, so that's what I had on the budget to do that, and
disagree.
And Craig cut this because he was trying to be responsible with the budget. And so Craig cut that, and we're just trying to have something that we can say, we owe it to the cities, the schools to provide them a public education team.
I agree with you.
So is that mostly
Yeah, what do you wanna
elementaries,
do?
right?
We try to hit every elementary, and then we do anything else that the public has, so we go to different events that the city has.
I think you gotta come up with 5,500. I mean, if it really come down to we couldn't afford it, then pull it out of the legislative budget, pull it out of the rainy day fund.
Well, I think it's important because I know when they used to do it, I remember my grandkids talking about it. And I know when you go down and shoot the fire hose when they have field day too, the water.
And it comes, to your point, Mayor, it comes out of the line item that we pull from. Obviously, we can move money around, but we typically have a line item that covers that, and we were short in that. So what level can we provide this education to the community?
I'd put a lot of work into getting $10,000 worth of sound equipment donated for this program.
I mean, I'll only do it if you put the clown costume on. That's my only condition. So that's
There's
it.
kids.
I know.
So your input is with costumes, or do you support it?
I'm good.
Right? Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, you can't cheat the kids.
Okay, Sophie?
Support it.
Okay, looks like that one stays. Next chart,
That's it, isn't it?
No,
Bill,
Parks and Rec.
you want to talk this one?
Yeah, just to review, this is a request to reclassify a recreation coordinator position to a recreation supervisor position. Puts this individual in line with the job duties that they are being asked to do
And performing.
and are currently actually performing.
Okay.
Again, it's a $12,000 impact, but we can take it out of our part-time wages and move it into the full-time to fund this.
Amber? Everything I've heard on this one simply says it's a policy issue. The money is already there. It can be redirected to cover this cost.
So if you cut out the 12,000 because it's already in your budget, I'd say,
Well, she's also using part-time people to help that, correct? If she was doing this, she wouldn't need as much part-time help, is kind of what the idea was. It's just shifting it from part-time to
Okay.
full-time.
Sophie, what's your thoughts on this one?
Let's support it.
Brian,
Yeah,
Randy,
Yep.
Ann,
Yes.
Joe?
so do you have to show it as a budget increase? If,
Well, it's already in the budget.
You just have to put the job at the back end of the budget saying we're going. to
you can
fill
cut that out as a potential cost increase.
We have the job description already there, everything, because it was done away with quite a while.
We would add the wording in the budget that says we have a reclassification and put the job description in the back.
So if I added up everything correctly, that's $108,800 is an additional ask
Okay,
above the 500.
if we
That's
keep
the
the
one
one full-time bailiff.
And
So
so
that's-
what does 108,800 do to the percentage?
Top of the 5.
So 608,800.
Yeah, so instead of being 16%, it's probably gonna be around 13, 15, 14. Best guess?
I'm running it for you real quick.
And then be prepared to run it with both bailiffs. So I'm gonna ask that.
Well, well, right now I'm sensing that, well, let's ask that question. Two of you basically are supportive of having it one bailiff instead of two. And we're waiting for Sophie because we need to clear some of that, so she's gonna provide input. And then you need to finish, Randy, your position, because you're locked on two. And right now, they're basically, the conversation's leading to one. Sophie, comment? You're going back, go back. Michelle, I think we're supporting that from the council. Go back 2 charts if you would, Brittany. One more, there you go.
So that was a 13.67.
That's with one bailiff. And then what do we, if we roll up to 2? And factor in the, again,
14.5.
yeah.
Goes back to almost the original.
It's probably pretty close.
Let me know your thoughts about this one, Sophie.
What did you say the two bailiffs percentage was?
14.5% tax increase.
So that's like, what, $14 a month? Because 16% was $15.50 a month, so.
Right now, the conversation is none, possibly one full-time, or possibly two. What do you want?
Possibly two.
Okay, so I got two council members wanting two, and I got two council members indicating one.
What would the increase be?
Yeah, if we, I think for you guys.
It was in the cards.
So
We basically indicated if you take
And you go-
virtually everything that basically is in this one, the estimated cost,
would be a 16%, is that slide 21?
it would be, whatever that would be,
Right here.
it's a 16% property tax increase.
For
Because the
everything.
additional cost would be approximately $168,000 increase on top.
So that's $885.99 a year, that's $15.50 a month.
It would be $51 just for property tax a year, or $94 increase just property tax for a business. And then add that to the other franchise
Yeah,
fees.
that's $15.50 a month.
So the two bailiffs was 15.2%.
Oh, 15.
15.2, and then the one bailiff was what? 13, so we're talking all over.
13.6.
Couple dollars a month.
Couple dollars, for a couple dollars a month, you too can adopt a, bailiff.
But Randy, 2 years ago, we basically had the same conversation, and we said it was actually 3 or 4, and we says, no, we'll do a 10% increase, and we're gonna give 2 police officers, 2 fire.
Each department asked for 5, and we
Yes.
give each
We
department.
gave
Give
it
them
2.
two.
Right.
So the bottom line is that when does all this stop?
When we don't
Our
have to,
population dropped at
when we
least
don't have to
600
provide bailiffs
people.
for the court is when it stops.
I say 1.
I say one.
You're at 600, you basically have probably lost, based on we best guess, you've lost about, well, they're saying now we're sitting right around 39,300. That's the population. We thought we were close to 40,000. You're gonna take out probably another 40 houses on 3,500 when what's widened. The population is shrinking and not growing. When I was going through this process, I asked fundamentally the same question all the time. Chief, how many police officers we need per capita of population? And the number always come back, he says, well, some people said 1,000, some says 800. I've heard all numbers. I don't know what that number is. What I'm saying to you is, and please don't misunderstand what I tell you. I think Roy City is the safest city in Weber County. Chief, you do a damn good job. It's hard, I understand that, but I'm telling you, people feel safe in your city. The biggest complaint I got is why couldn't the police chief stop those stupid planes from falling out of the air into our city? To be very honest with you, and you can't fix that.
To catch him.
But the bottom line is, they feel you are providing a safe, effective performance in the job in the city. So take that for what it's worth. And I think that's a pretty darn good. And I'll tell you another thing gets me concerned about, Matt. Legislators are still talking about taking away the courts out of our jurisdiction. I heard that a couple of weeks ago again from legislators. I don't know what that means, Brody.
We don't either yet.
But the bottom line is that they feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. I read the resolution that legislators passed last year. You were there, okay? And that resolution basically simply says they're still seriously thinking of taking the courts out of the municipality and have it a standalone. So what does that do to us? I'd sure like to know what that is, because interesting enough, if it's worth anything to you, our courts are actually doing pretty well in generating revenue. I mean, they do pretty good. And they're gonna pull that out. So all I'm saying to you would be is that please don't react to the thing is the Chiefs team is not doing a great job. They are. And they're going to be people in our city who are gonna just simply cause us a lot of problems. But Chief, you're managing a safe city, and I can testify a lot of people believe that, including me. Now, what does that mean? Could we make it better for you? Another bailiff, maybe two. Can we make it better for you? 2 more firefighters, absolutely. But I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not going to see any revenue increase to pay for this unless you raise property tax. It just doesn't exist. And I'll tell you, if you think it's trouble here, Chief, I think the state has also got some problems because they're not generating, they thought, or what they have been generating in terms of sales tax. And interesting enough, I think there's going to be a vote out in front of there that's going to say, we're going to take away sales tax revenue, possibly for everybody. And the only sales tax revenue generated will be revenue back to the cities. State gets out of that business. There's so many dynamics happening here. I just heard a senator go up there and simply, she made a mistake when she said it, but he says, we're going to do away with sales tax. Really? Every mayor in that group sat back, wait a minute, and then she qualified that. Not the city sales tax, at the state level. And we all took a nice breath.
So then what is the state gonna run on if they do take away this?
Well, the state over the last 3 years has reduced income tax by 1.2 billion.
Exactly.
So that has been returned. If I may, not to cloud the water, Mayor, I just got back from a policy summit back east, and for 2 days, we talked about clearance rates, morale and outcomes. I wouldn't feel good if I left the room not saying this, so I'm just gonna say it. I apologize to the city manager. There is a direct correlation between officer morale, the perception of public safety with the community, positive outcomes, and more clearance rates when you increase staffing. One of the problems we're running into the state of Utah is we're second in the nation when it comes to per capita staffing. National average is about 2.5 officers per 1,000 residents. I think we're like at 1.7, 1.8.
What's the city at?
That's our average right now.
That's the 1 point.
We wouldn't even hit the 2.5 if we hired 5 people. So we have people that are really, they're doing their best, but they're getting to a point where they're looking to leave. And this is one way we can increase positive outcomes, increase clearance rates, and be more visible. I don't have the ability to generate revenue in my department. That's unfortunate. I would love to say this is going to pay for itself. I think it will. It just won't be fiscally paying for itself.
But we're not questioning in terms of how the people feel about you. They absolutely support the idea. Most of them simply says we got the best police department in the county. You do an incredible job. And you know it as well as I do. We have sent public safety people who says, hey, I'm going to Salt Lake, I'm going somewhere else, and they want to come back. And the reason why they want to come back to you two particularly is because they like your leadership. They like what you do. And we may not pay them the best in the cotton picking state, but we take care of them. Maybe the conversation we ought to be having would be is Matt, you and I talked about this before. How do we set up a retention strategy that helps those people want to stay here so they can look aside from that 25-cent increase and then they want to stay here? I'd like to have that conversation. I'd like to invest in the people we have. And adding to the pot?
Can I make a comment?
Please.
To his point? There's a direct correlation. We've talked about a lot of different things. We've talked about people, a footstool for other departments. Retention and recruitment, a lot comes down to pay. It does. And so as I was here for 7 of them. We lost 10 firefighters. I can guarantee you someone's going to get to your house in a timely manner. I can't guarantee the quality. I've got 4 firefighters under 1 year. That I can't guarantee the quality. As I look at all the directors, Brand over here, if your water pipe breaks and he starts losing people, we got to call someone to shut it off. Maybe your house is going to flood because he ain't got the guy trained enough. Police wise, I mean, you got a guy robbing or breaking your car and he has a brand new guy. So there is a consequence if we don't do what we need. And I think we're all in a tough situation. But my fear is if we continue down a path that we don't value the employees, we are gonna send a message to them. They go, well, why would I stay? It is great. The culture here is phenomenal. But at the end of the day, I look my wife in the face and my family who pay the high bills. I gotta go somewhere else that can do that for me. And so it's tough, but I just wanna really, all the directors, we're all in a difficult situation. Matt's in a hard spot. But there is a consequence, and I can just tell you from a guy who didn't get raises for 8 years, I was leaving, and I loved Ogden. But I had to take care of my family. I did end up going. But there were some adjustments made, but I just think there are hard decisions, but you send a direct message. If we continue to, like, we get these, we're just trying to fulfill the job responsibilities, but I don't think we're asking for anything in excess. We're just trying to keep up with the demands, and I know you know that.
No, Chief, let me just make it clear. If you asked me 6 months ago how I feel about property tax, and I've said this publicly, and I said it to people, I says, I don't want it. And here's what Matt told me. Matt told me simply, says, you got a choice, Mayor. He says, if we don't get a property tax, then you got to tell every employee, says they don't get their COLA. Next year, if you don't basically come up with additional revenue, you're going to turn over, you're not going to get a COLA, you're not going to get a merit increase. And then tell me how many people are going to be working in Roy City when they start evacuating. The whole reason why I'm sitting here and simply says, we may have to step up on this one when I don't like property taxes, because we want to protect your people. We have that obligation. And I'm telling you right now, most people who are on fixed income is not getting a COLA that we're giving our employees, and they are not giving merit increase. It ain't gonna happen, but we are this group. And the only reason why we're doing this group is because we got a city next to us gonna do the exact same thing, if not more. So we have to take care of our people. Matt, you presented a budget. I need merit and I need COLA, and that's gonna be 6-7%, whatever that number is going to be to every employee. And I think this council is going to do that because we want to protect them. But I don't think it's going to stop there, Chief.
No.
I think you're going to find Bountiful, you're going to find Woodcross, as Danny suggested, you're going to find some city that says, hey, I'm going to raise a little bit more. And now we're going to be in a food fight trying to keep the people you got when that happens. I just want to make sure you walk out of here understanding and tell the team is, we're going to do everything we can to take care of the employee people. My concern, council, is adding more people to the pot, which you also have to take care of. And not only that, but you also have to give them merit, and you got to give them that COLA. More money has to come out to pay for that. Matt, if we were back in December 22nd, when things kind of fell apart in this city in terms of sales tax, because I showed you the charts, it's on here, we flatlined. I am telling you right now, if it stayed the path we were on, we wouldn't have this conversation. Money would be in there, and we should have been talking about how we can do a salary survey to try to get our employees where they need to be. We can't even have that conversation. So all I'm saying to you is, but it's the council has to make a decision. What I've got on the table right now is 2 council members says 1, 2 council members says 2. Brian, unless you're willing to change your position, I know where you stand on this, I need to get to the majority. Where do we take this, council? Are we going to do 1 or are we going to do 2?
What did Sophie say she was gonna do?
Okay, so when you say that, we're not making a vote right now. Don't
No,
you just
just-
bring it to the table on Tuesday and say, here's the percentage for this, here's the percentage for 2?
Well, if you want to basically have that conversation, then you need to tell us what we're going to put in the final decision so you can vote this out. I was kind of hoping simply says you will get a document in front of you that basically says, this is what the consensus want. It's not a vote, but it says, I'd like to see it in there. And then you can make that final decision when you get public input. And right now, I'm not allowing any public input. I'm just saying is, if you tell us 2, there'll be 2 on that, and you can debate it in there to mark it to 1 if you feel you need to. If we put 1 in there, you can come back in, any councilman says, hey, I want it to 2. You can certainly do that. I just wanted to see if we can get a direction so we can get it into the budget conversation on Tuesday. What do you want? Somebody has to give in. I need a majority.
So I'm at 2.
Yep.
Sophie, are you still at 2 for the bailiffs?
I'll do one
Okay, so that gives you your majority.
Okay,
majority, but you can still,
We can still set the tax rate, because again,
Right.
in the
Right.
upcoming meeting, we still have to say what our max tax rate that we're looking for is,
and we
but.
can hash it out over that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with
Right.
that.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yep.
we'll go in with one. Okay, chart. Sorry, Brittany, I'm gonna get through this, I promise. Joe, I know you got another commitment you gotta work towards. Okay, as it sits, this will be slightly adjusted. We went through this, but this is what you're looking at in terms of taxes and fee chart. Okay, we got through this part. Next one. This is the short and long-term cost-cutting and revenue development opportunities. There are 2 short-term recommendations I want to talk about, and we got 4 long-term recommendations. Okay, by placing these recommendations into the proposed budget, they become approved action items that direct staff to perform within this fiscal year. The passing of this budget is an ordinance. And for this next year, you do what the ordinance says. Technically, it gives Matt full authority to execute everything that's you approved in this budget, everything. That's what it says. If you want to tweak that and add a little something like the things we're going to talk about, you can certainly put that in language. It's not going to have a direct impact on finances, but it can give him directions towards what you want accomplished. Chart. Okay, so here, Brian, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I know we talked about it, but it didn't get included in the worksheet I sent you. If a property tax increase is considered, recommend removing enough funds from the fund balance, okay, to keep the tax increase down to single digit. Amber ran the numbers, okay? If it stayed at $500,000, then to get it to 9,000, get down to 9%, what it would require then is to pull $100,000 out of the general fund. With what you're thinking right now in terms of increases, that's now going to be pulled out of the general fund would be about $200,000 to get it at 9%. And the fund balance, because she's concerned about that, she put in there that says it'll drop, I think it's sitting about 15% now. It'll drop to 14.5% if you removed 100,000. A little different, it'll drop to 14% if you remove $200,000 out of that general fund. Is that a fair statement?
For approximately every 100,000 you use, it's about 0.5%.
0.5%.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
so do you want to consider basically
15
drawing
right
from
now?
general funds to help get this tax
Yes,
increase down to?
Had to project it.
Yeah.
I think it was when I first got on the council, we made that, maybe I wasn't even on the council, but I remember being in a meeting where it was decided we didn't want that to drop below 18%. So
There was, I remember that number too for some
I
reason.
would not advocate to go below that.
Already there.
Yeah.
I know, but I don't want to kick the can down the road farther, because if it hits the fan next year, I'd like to have a little bit of,
No, but
Go ahead, go ahead.
this year has been like a perfect storm. You lost about 50 properties that were paved that we're getting nothing from. You're dealing with a rate of inflation that none of us in this room can control. And now, we're looking at, we've already dipped into the reserve to get the complex up. I wasn't part of that vote, but if we can do that to put a complex up, man, can we soften the blow to these residents who have had to deal?
you put 500,000 in, which keeps us from touching it at all.
So my question, I guess, if we take and we soften it this year, the full Brunton effect goes in, if we keep having to dip into the.
And I understand that, but we just put on Facebook a day ago how 4 new businesses are coming to Roy. And yet when people get their tax notice, they're gonna go, wow, they still hit me up for 25% or 20%. I mean, the only thing I'd ask anybody in the room is who represents the people? I mean, all the people, and it's us. It's the elected officials. And if we can't be counted on to represent them, then
Why are we in office?
yeah. I
Well,
say
I
it,
don't-
I
yeah.
also believe we're representing them by providing essential services. I know you said you weren't on the vote to vote for the complex, but you showed up to the meeting. I know you didn't speak, Brian, but I know you feel like that's a service to the city. I'm pretty sure you would have voted for it.
And I'm not saying I wouldn't have, but my question is we're dealing with something that I don't think we might have to deal with next year. So that's where I disagree with the mayor. I think sales tax revenues will rebound some. I bought enough donuts at Armands to make it work. But I'm
I
telling
have to
you,
agree with the mayor. I think next year is no better than this year.
I like that, Brian. That was good.
Well, like I said, let's get Cafe Rio in and then the Skadden House will also start to contribute to the tax base. Well,
I buy enough soda pop and cans to keep the revenue going too, so.
To Brian's point, he's just basically saying to you, he simply says, he's passionate about this, and Brian, we appreciate the input, that's important. But he's asking you, would you entertain to get us to a single digit if we're going to go, and it sounds like the council's seriously thinking about it, I'll let the vote decide that. Would the council consider using fund balance to get us down to a 9%?
No. Sell a property at the train station and get us down.
right, and that's the thing is, go ahead. No, my perspective, like with the quote unquote rainy day fund, is for some type of catastrophic event that occurs that we have not taken a plan for. Let's say we have some type of catastrophic incident where we have a sinkhole on a road and it completely and totally obliterates an entire neighborhood. That's what we tap the emergency
Or
fund
an
for.
earthquake.
Or an earthquake, or something else that we just don't know about. I mean, I get wanting to keep it low under a single digit, but again, it's a one-time, we would just have to go back and continually wash, rinse, and repeat year after year.
Sophie, you have a comment on this?
No, I don't, comment to, I guess just to Brian is, yeah, if I get trying to keep taxes down, but that's why we're here, is if we're not gonna, you either have to cut something or increase tax, like there's no way around that.
Dan?
Yeah, I don't see taking the money out of the fund balance just because the proposed tax increase, if we could keep it around 12 to 14, and it's, you know, it's not that much a month, everything's going up. I just don't see, I mean, unless big corporations that run all the food chains and start, you know, giving back to the, I know that the clothing's going down, but I just don't see anything going down. I mean, I know house value's gone down, so property taxes, you know, are gonna go down, but I just hate taking that money out, because I just think we'll just have to keep continually doing that, and I think if we can keep it down around 12 to 13, 14% tax increase. I mean, everybody I've talked to, and I've told all my family and friends that that's probably what it's gonna be at, and they're like, what do you expect? Because of everything else is going up, all the price of everything's going up. And we just, I think everything we've talked about for our city that we need, and I think it's expected that everyone expects that they're gonna have a tax increase. As much as I hate to have one.
I
Mm,
have
I
a
mean,
quick
I'll-
question, sorry. So on that, is that the 14% with dipping into the fund balance? Cause I'm not agreeing with dipping into the fund balance at all.
No, that's what it would leave in the fund balance,
Yeah.
only 14%
14.5% of fund balance.
if we took
Okay.
100,000 out.
Okay,
I mean, I'll share a personal story that goes along with this. Last fall, about Thanksgiving time, I made the decision to dip into my savings account for something I really wanted. I have been kicking myself in the butt, working 2 part-time jobs to put the money back into my savings account, because I realized it was the dumbest damn decision I made. And I think that falls right in line with this. You talk to Amber, 15's not enough, 20's not enough. we made a decision, I can't say we, the council at one point made a decision not to go below 18. Had I known that number earlier this year, I might have made a different decision at that time too. I wouldn't support dropping the rainy day fund. I would support selling a property, which is effectively the same thing, because you're taking one-time money and infusing a perpetual revenue stream. I would go sell a property at the train station and reduce the tax increase. But I caution you on that, because that's one-time money. And most of what we're increasing is the human capital part of it. Even if you took out the one bailiff and the other, it's $500 of $500K of human capital that will be that much plus a little bit next year.
That's right.
Exactly right.
So don't touch the bank.
Here's what I heard.
And I don't think we can compare us to Bountiful and Woods Cross that much. I mean, I'm sure their income per family is a heck of a lot more than what the Roy.
Bountiful's got half a Costco in there.
And they just have a lot more income and have more money and more revenue to pay and give raises than Roy City. We're not a very rich city. So,
And yet we're gonna tax people more money.
yeah.
That was the decision. Whatever the tax rate comes out to be, then bottom line would be is we'll not dip into the general fund. That's the consensus of this. Okay, next chart. We're almost there, council. This one was basically, and Michelle, you need to weigh in on this one because this is important. Recommend no more spending on furniture, exercise equipment, office equipment, remodels, or facility improvements, okay, during the fiscal year 2024-2025. And the rationale behind that was really more direct to the fact is we're just not seeing the sales tax revenue chart. I want to make sure you again see exactly where we are. I really kind of got excited in that January timeframe, Amber, but you can see it drop back down.
I did too.
And
All them sales after Christmas.
that's right. And bottom line is that we're just not seeing it. It's not growing. Go back up.
It's not going.
Next chart. Okay, for this one. So now, Michelle, you've got to get the complex facility where it's functional, okay? Is that gonna require you to have equipment and stuff to do that? Furniture.
Not in fiscal year 25. We feel comfortable with what we've got right now.
Joe?
Can I make a comment to that? And this might not be popular. We infused a lot of money into the complex for swimming because a lot of people talked about they wanted swimming. Good. I voted. I'm good with it. Can we do away with the exercise and weight room upstairs and get out of that business? We don't have the money to keep up on modern equipment. That room could be used for a class or training or something like that. If people want to lift weights, go to Vasa, go to EO school, wherever. We provided a pool and a safe bathroom and that stuff. We got basketball courts, we got bing bong courts. Get rid of the weight equipment and the exercise room
Well, the
upstairs.
weight equipment, is it in good enough shape that people could use it though? And will people
I mean,
use it?
it currently is, yeah.
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 So I mean, unless we have something for it and we could still good enough to use, then.
Joe, if you'd come and run the bing bong class. for us,
Yeah, I'm also racquetball.
I was to racquetball, that's what I was trying to think. Ping pong.
Randy? Ann's basically indicating is, well, we don't see a problem. Joe's basically saying is maybe we, and to your point, Joe, what I would recommend to do in a city council meeting, request, based on the approval in a formal meeting, public meeting, to request Michelle to come in with an assessment that terms about removing that component out of that, and then let her present an input to that, and then let the council decide.
Well, I can tell you, it's not worth anything to sell. We had, they gave us a whole bunch of stuff for Roy High because I can't remember where they got it from, but they couldn't get anything out of it, donated it to us.
I mean,
So you get basically nothing out of used equipment. I've had lots of it in my life, but I've had to give it to the DI, but,
And I haven't talked to her about it. I just got thinking,
I mean.
I've been up there and utilized some of it. It's decent equipment, but a lot of it's due to be upgraded and
Yeah, well, I don't
it's
think
money
we
we
should
don't
pay to
have to upgrade.
upgrade it, but I think if people are still using it.
I'm just asking you on this one would be is that it's just a moratorium
yeah.
during
Yeah.
this season.
Right.
We just unless you break a chair or there's something. you should-
Come out of budget.
Other than that, no major, because
Right.
you just went through a major remodeling. certainly if you look back here, we put a lot of equipment right back here. I remember when that is. We've made improvements, modernized, okay, bathrooms. I mean, we've spent a lot of money at the staff level improving the working conditions of our employees.
But with public safety, we're either buying a gym pass like a lot of cities do, or providing a place for them to exercise.
Exactly.
I'd rather have them close, so if it hits the fan, they can grab their gear and go.
I agree, but, and you may have, if you haven't had a chance to look at all the equipments in here, there's some nice equipment in this next room. As well as really nice bathrooms that have been completely gutted and redone. We've done some really nice things. I'm just asking you so we don't redirect the money out and not be able to pay our those things. All we're asking would be is, do you have any problem with us just not allowing facility office modifications for this coming year?
That's.
I'm
yep.
okay with that.
Right?
Yeah,
Gotta find ways to save money.
no,
Okay. Sophie, comment?
Yep.
Okay, chart? Okay, chart? Okay, this is a long-term development opportunity to try to find ways to generate funding. I just want to make sure you kind of understand the logic behind this. And I'll be honest with you, and you need to listen to what I'm going to say to you. Brian, especially, if the city council on Tuesday votes to go into a truth and taxation and chooses to basically have a property tax increase, you better darn well have Kevlar. You said it yourself, Joe, you're already getting people who are reading Facebook or reading and they're asking questions, and somehow you have to defend this.
I wish Facebook would fall off the face of the earth.
Good or bad, the fact is Kevlar. My comment to you would be is, so let's see if we can do something in the long term that maybe we can help generate revenue for the city. Because I'm saying sales tax are it is the particular revenue, and Amber, Matt, tell me if I'm off. It is the single biggest revenue generator for Roy City.
Right.
And when it goes tubs down, we're in trouble.
Well, thank heavens people have to eat, so we have more.
Which is why we got all of our stores and why we think we're doing real well. And that's the reason why I get really concerned, and to be honest with you, when West Haven says they're putting a brand new Walmart. And by the way, Hooper is still talking, although they're getting pushback, of putting a Smith station on 5500. Now you take the people who come up from the south, west, and visit our stores because we got the best of the best to spend their money. We'll have choices.
Smith needs to buy out Weinigers and expand that whole complex.
I know they're gonna put it in Hooper. That's unless they get pushback. So
We need
this was more about, says we got 2 acres down there. And to be honest with you, maybe we can do something. Next chart, I want to make sure you see it. Now, I'll be honest with you, council, we don't have to write this into the document. We could walk out of here and just simply says, you know what? Brody, in your economic development committee meeting, okay, we'll put these issues in the conversation and we just work it through an economic development. But my comment to you would be is if we look at these ideas as an avenue by which we can look for future revenue to help the city out, hence the reason. There are 3 properties. Top one's UDOT, Roy City owns the middle one, and some limited liability company owns the 3rd one. I have no clue how to get access to that 3rd one. You can't do anything with that middle one because it's a retention basin, and UDOT has no plans except leave that other one vacant. But if we take an action, either add it to this document or at least take it as an action from this meeting to have an ongoing conversation, do something. Maybe we collectively can take these 3 properties and make something out of them.
I thought we did that in the last budget meeting.
Not this one.
Yeah.
We talked about it, but these were just ideas. I need to know whether or not we put this into the document or we just push this one into just say, hey, drive this through Economic Development Committee and not put this into a budget language.
Put it in the document.
Well, yeah, I think it's a good idea, especially if they're gonna build Walmart and stuff down there, then.
Mayor said it's coming.
Maybe we can put a food truck corral in there and charge people to park their food trucks.
Ryan, thoughts?
yeah,
You okay with that?
yeah.
Sophie?
Yeah, have discussion.
Chart. This particular property is property that basically rests at the Front Runner Station. There's 1.6 acres. I'll show it to you in a second. Right now, Brody, correct me if I'm wrong, but I got excited. I think the planning commission has forwarded us their recommendations on a change to the stationary plan at the train station.
We'll discuss it Tuesday as well.
Okay, so that was, they've sent their recommendations. We'll take it up. This goes to the heart of that because we need to make some action to be correlated with the UTA chart. This piece of property right now. Now, Brandon, you gotta tell us what's happening here. I am telling you, we never planned when we put the stationary plan to fill that up with a water tank. What we said we were gonna do at that location, and it's in our stationary plan and got approved by this council, as well as got approved by the Wasatch Regional Council, is that we're gonna put townhouses at that location. I get concerned if there is a statute out there that simply says we gotta find a location for more water.
So, yeah, and that also hinges on, because right now, I guess we're responsible, and I guess our agreement with West Haven is coming due.
Expires this month.
Expires. So if we don't have to keep storage on hand for them, we roughly have about 7 million gallons of storage now. To meet, we have 13.5 thousand connections. So right now we set at 5.5, so we still have 1.5 million gallons of storage that we're good,
In the
so,
plus?
yep. So, I mean, we can go up to 15,000 connections, and right now with the storage we have, we can fulfill that. So if we don't have to supply West Haven,
Then I would
we should
say
be
to you then, as my mind's eye, let's stay the course and figure out what we want to do with this property. Joe's suggesting what?
Well, I thought we talked about in last budget meeting to remove the water feature from that and use the parking lot of Parks and Recreation as a potential place for another
What you're
water
saying,
tower.
well, and yeah, I mean, if we don't have to supply for West Haven, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever hit 15,000 connections.
So,
But if you had to, you have a parking lot that's next to a current water
Yeah,
tank.
and if we, I mean, we may only need to add 1 million gallons, and we could possibly, because 5175 is an aging metal tank, we could possibly upsize it and do a cement tank and gain another 1 million gallons. It basically comes down, if we don't have to do West Haven, then I think we should be.
West Haven can get their own water.
yeah, we don't,
Witching sticks, find it in the ground and drill a hole.
we don't get their water. Where do they get their water?
Well, right now we have an agreement with them. We sell all our excess water to West Haven. Unless you choose in a public meeting to change that contract agreement we have with West Haven, we sell all excess water to them.
It's actually pretty minimal of what they're taking.
Oh,
But it's an old agreement from quite a while ago that
It's
expires.
a 25-year agreement.
Yeah.
It looks like it's getting ready to expire.
Yeah.
Don't I know it?
Okay, so you want this to do something and make some action on this piece of property in the budget? Words in the budget to take an action to work this one.
yes.
Yes.
Not sure where it's gonna go. Joe suggested maybe we ought to sell it. If we can get a developer in there that says, I'm gonna take the UTA property and our property, and they're gonna pay for it, and they're gonna build a development, that's certainly something they can do. But what I'm hearing from you, get it in the document, just reference, there's no money here, and just give that as an actionable item for the next fiscal year to find some avenue that make that property worth something to Roy City.
Just
Okay with that?
just a hunch, I'm assuming that because this was a future water tank, the water utility fund owns it. So any proceeds off the sale would go to a utility enterprise fund and not the general fund. But when you do develop that land, you would get a property tax off of that land, especially when you're.
That's where I
enhancing
made the
property.
comment, do a land swap and give them the parking lot of Parks and Recreation. And so this general fund gets the sell off of that, and the water utility fund, enterprise fund gets the parking lot.
The room. Right here, we have water lines to pay for.
Here's what I got out of this, Matt. We got a direction to simply put it in the document to work it. How it will come out, we'll just simply report back on. Fair enough? Chart. We're getting close, Joe. Okay. This is a piece of property that's 2.4 acres that are vacant right along 4800. Now, this one surprised me right now, to be honest with you. I think, Brandon, I see big like tubes or something sometimes are stored there. Maybe it's just a nice place to put them.
Yeah, no, they've been there a while, so we actually,
Chart.
yeah.
Okay. This is the property. It's sitting in I think it's, Joe, it's an R17. So it's 7,000 square foot parcels. City council has not seen this in large part because the planning commission hasn't, and they are land use authority. So to do anything with any of these lots, we have to go back through the land use authority for recommendation back to the city council if there's going to be changing. One of the things that was brought up last time in the conversation, should we consider this property for a little more density? A little more density,
I think the developer that backed out on 6,000 might be a great place for him.
could be.
Same type of development.
So certainly if you would like us to have now focus on this one, and we'll do this through economical development and make sure that works, then if you want to put it in the document that says, put some attention to this, then we can put it in there. Are you okay with that? Brian?
Yes.
Sophie?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
You okay? Ann?
Yep.
Okay, Joe? Okay, chart. We're almost there? Okay. Now, this one's a little more interesting because this is a little bit further out there, but this is important to hear this. This is a piece of property along Midland Drive. Right now, the future land use map as it sits today shows this property. Next chart. I want you to see it. It basically takes all that property. And it now, the future land use map says that's community commercial. But that strip on the right-hand side out there is earmarked, Michelle, for a park. Okay? Now picture this. There's nothing else around this property except to the south. You got power lines to the east of it, and then you got community commercial property that's sitting in that triangular. To me, council, it doesn't make sense to put a park there when it's prime, because just down the street to the right is a planned Walmart. And it's going to commercialize that. And what makes this one interesting, if it happens, not sure what's going to happen, that's by UDOT, but right now UDOT should be getting a contractor on staff that's going to design what's going to happen to 3,500 and widening of Midland. Hence the reason why, Brandon, the $5 million. You've got to have the money to replace the water pipes while we crack open the road. And if they're going to widen that, I looked on the north side of that, there's some pretty expensive townhomes there. I looked on the south end of that, and I see what appears to me some pretty open vacant property with some houses on it. It's possible, not saying they will, but it's possible, and our future land use map says this, that process may be that when expanded could take that property. If it does, it'll be community commercial. You can certainly change that, but I would say then that becomes a tool for Brody to start saying is, I'm going to put businesses on that land. And there's a lot of land there. Give them a little bit more. Give them those extra 5-10 acres and basically put more business opportunities there. We need business. We got to build that sales tax base. Are you okay with staff now asking the planning commission to take a look and make a recommendation back to city council to consider making all of that land under the future land use map community commercial, or mixed use, got some choices here, and take that park out of the conversation? Comments?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Randy?
Yep.
Joe? Sophie?
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I hate to prolong the meeting, but I want to rewind because Brandon kicked the hornet's nest. So,
Go.
the property at the train station, if we sold that and put it in the water utility fund, could we reduce how much money we would have to charge monthly?
I don't know the answer.
Depends on how much money's in there in that property. So if it's $500,000, yeah, theoretically you could.
Yeah.
So we need $5 million within 3 years to pay for 30.
So if that can give you 500,000, that kickstarts it.
Yeah, that's a 10% reduction, so it's a dollar amount.
I don't wanna kick it as well either though, as we got sewer line as well that needs
Yeah.
to be replaced in that road. So.
Not positive.
You gotta tell us what the number is. Right now, it's 5 million. But I will tell you, Matt and I talked, and you were part of this, Brandon. We went in with a congressional insert. And if we can get the congressional insert, to help us offset that, then that's just one bill. Maybe we'll get full payment, not have to get through the full 3 or 4 years, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I
And-
say, can we take that money from the sale of that property and
I mean,
offset
I would
a little
discourage
bit?
it just for the simple fact of, like we said, we got 165 miles of pipe.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm dealing with the neighborhood right now that's not real happy. It's because we don't have the money to replace the whole line, which should happen. So we're gonna go in and probably do 30, 40 feet of it because we got a water leak that we can't find.
Okay.
So,
Oh, I know about that.
I think, yeah.
Infrastructure is an issue.
So, yeah, so I wouldn't take anything away from infrastructure.
No, but I will back up, but it makes sense. With your deficit, we should probably keep it there.
Keep it, yeah.
Well, that's where you got a $5 million deficit. So your point, if you can sell it and you can.
I can be
direct that-
rationalized. I just gotta be hit upside the head every now and again.
And well, I've seen like a neighboring city, they're on Taylor West Weber, I think their base rate's $35 or 15. So, we're, yeah.
That's another conversation.
So,
No, I take back what I said. Leave it in the water fund, cause thinking of what you do have.
I think we got direction, 2 charts. Brittany, one more after this? Okay, here's the issue. Maps.
I do have to leave though.
I know. The budget document you have received has detailed narrative. We have held 2 budget work sessions now to this date. Final budget must be adopted by the 20th of June. The plan right now is on the 18th of June, which is next Tuesday. They're gonna bring that budget to a vote. Great time to get, before you lock in on anything, great time to get public input. Have that conversation. Bottom line is, correct me if I'm wrong, if the decision is to have a property tax increase, Amber, what kind of ceiling are we looking at, cap we're looking at, we have to present and approve?
Yeah, so on Tuesday, what you would want to decide is the most money you want to bring in for a property tax increase. You don't have to designate where it's going. That can still come on a vote in August. So the decisions about what we've been talking about tonight don't have to happen on Tuesday, but you do need to say, this is the most dollar amount I want for a property tax increase. You can say a dollar amount or a percent amount, either one. We will put that in there, then it can still be discussed until August, and the vote of where to put it will come in August.
And so we can say max would be 15%, but we adjust it.
Say where it goes. And like the position reclassifications and stuff, we would hold off on that until the final vote in August. We were even thinking to not do the COLA because we don't know what the vote is going to be. So if there's, head nods of yes, go ahead and do that, we're for sure going to do that. We could do that in July. But we need some direction on where to go because we don't know if the money's coming in. So if we do decide on the bailiffs or on the full-time position, we would hold off on those until August when you decide this is how much money we want in a tax increase and this is where we want you to put it.
But if the conversation in Tuesday's meeting simply says they're supporting about hiring the bailiff, they're supporting about the extra money for the clerk in fire, they're saying is move that supervisor over, give you the janitor 1 to janitor 2, and they're saying is, yes, we want that into the language of the budget. Would that be enough for you to simply says, yes, we're gonna go ahead and issue the COLA?
If you want to do those changes and say, we want this in there, yes, go ahead and do this July 1st, you could do that.
It's locking you into that.
But it's
tax increase.
locking you into then voting on that in August.
You're expending those funds.
But I'm saying, so what do you want that document to, what's that document gonna look like?
An option.
Right. So when I presented on Tuesday, I'm basically going to give you the same exact document I gave you before, other than changing the wording on the 3-year on the utilities. Everything else is going to stay the same. And then you're going to say, this is the most dollar amount we want on property tax increases or dollar or percent. And that's really the only decision being made on Tuesday.
Okay, and we'll leave that, give you flexibility in August to figure out if you want to adjust. Fair enough? Yep. Okay, Matt, you okay? Got what you need? Thanks, Joe. Okay. Sophie, anything else before we go for an adjournment?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Brian,
I got nothing.
you got nothing? Brian? And
Nope, I'm good.
I got nothing.
chiefs, department heads, anything? Now's the time to put it on the table.
Nothing, you vampire.
Okay, okay. Michelle? Okay, Brody? Whitney, I know you put this all together. Anything you want to share before we jump? Amber? Matt? Good. Brandon? Okay. Do you have a motion then to adjourn?
And motion we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are now officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, all, great meeting.